Meeting of the Water Quality Management Committee, 7:30 p.m. School Department Ad Building will come to order. First item on the agenda is continued conversation about the technical assistant echo toilet task description that we took up last week. We everyone got a copy last week of the, that's right, somebody has to leave the room.
Can I just ask a question? Why is she leaving?
She's a potential bidder on this
I
contract.
know, but we're not going into executive session, and we're on worldwide television.
She can go watch it on television. I think
Okay.
in an excess of caution, people who might be bidding on things leave the room when we're talking about them.
She is a special town employee, but otherwise be considered an insight, so that if people wanted to watch her on TV, fine. It's just an abundance of caution.
Okay, I don't know, if we're on television, fine, okay.
Okay, so everybody got a copy of this last week. Are there any additions or corrections or observations?
Trying to find my copy.
Yes,
Okay, there was the one called Final Draft, November 2012, Scope of Work, Technical Assistant.
I have several comments.
Ron.
Oh, okay, thanks, Eric. I have a few comments on a number of sections here. So, and the first one concerns Part 1, Task 2. And that is that Steve Rafferty had raised the question about whether it's worthwhile to go after a 0% loan versus a 2% loan. And I'm wondering whether that kind of comparison could be provided under this to show that what it would mean really in terms of getting the 0% versus the 2%. Because I think, Steve, you might be able to elaborate more on that, but it seemed that a lot of the cost of getting a 0% might be more than going with the 2%, you know.
Yeah, no,
it's just a question about.
Yeah. I think that's why it says possible application. The original text had acted as if it were a given, and I think it's not a given at all that we're going to go for the 0%.
I think the idea is we want to get an SRF application, as that's also a task for Nate, and this would be some of the additional things to do whatever we want that consultant to do, things that Nate aren't doing. This consultant can look into it, but the key thing, it's an SRF application, just like in all these descriptions.
Right, but
The detail will occur once we hire the person and we tell the person exactly what we want. What things Nate's not doing, what things we need this person to do.
all I'm saying is we may not be putting in an application.
You put in for 2%, you still need to put it in. You don't get the 0% for everything.
Right, well, this is
Okay,
my
why don't we
point
let
then.
him explain what he's asking?
Yeah, well, that's my point basically, is that if we put it in it would be good for us to know really what we're going to do. Are we going to put in both? Or are we just going to put in one?
No, I think if you're going to put in for the 0, a whole series of things have to have been done by the town to be eligible for the 0.
Right.
Whether or not we want to go down that road is a fair question.
Right.
And helping us to decide that, I think, is part of this job description.
Right, no, exactly. And that's why I'm just saying that it would be good to know, okay, well, maybe that's sort of implied, but that could be included as saying, well, if we go with the 2%, or else, like, to get the 0%, well, we have a list of items we have to do. For the 2%, we would have a different list. Some would be the same, right? So I'm just trying to say if we had the two lists prepared, and then we can make a judgment. And then that goes into task 3 that has to do with this growth control bylaw type thing called flow neutral, whatever it is, yeah. So I'm just trying to look at this, is that it would help me, at least, know what which way to go. If we don't have the 2% research done, or what isn't needed for the 2% that's in the 0%, then it would be good to know that just because Otherwise, we'll come to a point, we'll say, well, what is required for a 2%? And we would have to go back and dig that up. And with a scope of work, it should be pretty clear what needs to get done. As opposed to, you just can't add things kind of willy-nilly, basically, as we go along, because there's an expectation here.
There are certain basic requirements for the 2% loan, and we're obviously going to do that. The 0% adds additional barriers, hurdles that need to be covered, and that's why it's specifically itemized here, because it's this extra level of data analysis that is required, and the flow neutral bylaw, which is going to take a lot of work,
Right.
just to get to a point where we might have a draft that we could present to town meeting. So I don't think you need to worry about, if you need a list of what's required for the 2% application, I think that that's a fairly easy thing to get. But it usually is done with the assistance of the engineering company, and one of GHD's tasks under their current contract is to prepare the initial application, which is due next August.
Well, should they do this work then? Should we
But
transfer
this is
over?
this is above what would be needed for the basic application. And that's not in their contract. That's why it's been broken out here.
If we were going to go for the 0%, there'd be a lot more work that isn't in their contract.
Yes. Oh, it isn't.
It
No.
isn't in GHD's.
They're assuming 2%.
Yes, that's the basic application that will be made.
This is,
Have you got an amendment to offer here, do you think?
I mean, is it possible? Yes. I'd just like to suggest that that this task 2 be in 2 parts, and I think the first part is what's printed, and the second part would just be a list of requirements for, just to get it from GHD, a list of the requirements for 2%, so we can see them clearly side by side. That's all.
But that wouldn't be a task for this contractor. We just asked GHD for the list.
Right, well, we could ask, or the assistant could ask.
I'll do it for free. You got the list?
Thank you, Steve.
How many SRF applications have you prepared, or your company, roughly?
Oh, well, the company, hundreds certainly.
Hundreds,
And,
okay.
And I've done many, and Jeff has done many. and
Okay.
So we got
So making a short list of, this is what goes in an application is
fact, it's
no
all-
big deal.
There's a standard form.
That's right. It's
There
already
you
in
go.
the material you've given the.
I think one
Yeah.
of the technical memorandums.
We have
I think
it.
so.
We have it. Yeah. This is not something that we need to reinvent.
Okay.
No, I'm not saying reinvent, I was just saying it would be just nice to have that, but if you're gonna provide it,
Yeah.
could you provide it to whoever we hire to do
Well,
this?
let's
Yeah,
hope.
we can.
Part of the interview process is to see how much they know. You don't give them everything.
All right.
Someone comes in and says, oh, gee whiz, I never thought about
Okay,
that.
it sounds like this task has
Okay.
been dealt with, right? You're going to provide this.
Okay, well, for me, it would be good, but
Okay.
I don't have that, I wouldn't be able to, I'd need to have those 2 documents to look at for this particular site,
Oh,
okay?
Okay. Any other comments or observations on the text that's before us for the technical assistance?
I have a couple more things. We have, on task 4, it seems that the factor of what has been discussed, and I think is often done in many communities that are working on this issue, is to look at the betterment component
You
as...
mean task 3?
Task 4. Task
go
4
ahead.
in part 1. Do you have it?
Yeah, but you used the word betterment, and I just thought maybe you meant task 3. What
Yeah,
it is.
in the
But
version
keep
I
going.
have, task 3 talks about betterments.
There's a new version.
No, the new version
Oh, okay.
has, flow control is new. The new version has task 4. Task 3 is flow control.
Well, leaving that piece aside, what do you want to talk about betterments?
No, I'm just saying, okay, I don't know if there's been any change, but the, firstly, in looking at betterments, the capital cost, cost recovery can either be through a betterment or through the tax base.
Okay, now, we're not going to have this conversation tonight. This
No,
is
no.
about the job description for someone we're going to hire.
I know.
And
No, I don't
we
want to
really
go
are
into-
not going to get into the whole details of betterments, because we'll be here all night.
I know, but if you're researching options on betterments to homeowners,
Right.
then what percent of the cost?
The change that was made last week
Yeah.
was to research new options, such as, but not limited to, and then it listed a few.
Right, right.
So, do
Okay.
you want to change that?
No, I don't want to change that. I had the word necessarily in there, but that's okay, but not necessarily. Okay, it's fine. Then so we can add that if we need, as needed.
Okay.
The other element here is that if we have a betterment paid off in greater than 20 years, that's an infinite number of options,
Okay.
right? So maybe we should limit it greater than 20 to 30 years.
Okay, is that a motion?
Yeah.
Okay, is there any second?
Could you repeat that?
The motion was made and there was no second. Keep going.
Okay. On task two, task two,
That's two, okay.
I'm just wondering, when we get to sections 2.7 and 2.12 or 2.12, there's nothing specifically, it talks about TMDLs in both of them, but there's no mention of nitrogen reduction credit that might be assigned to eco-toilets that could then be used in meeting the TMDL. So for example, whatever it is, for sewers, I guess it's 100%, and for some denitrifying systems, maybe it's 50%, and maybe for, and so it depends on, so I was just wondering if that's something that would be a better kind of a thing that follows state law, basically, in terms of the way they look at various technologies.
I can try to answer why it didn't appear here.
Okay.
Is because that's either explicitly or implicitly, I would have to read the document before I knew, contained in the MOA with BCDHE. They are specifically, the project is designed for the specific purpose of doing that, of finding out that information. So it's not something that has to be tasked to the...
But for our nationwide television audience, that's the Memorandum of Understanding with the Barnstable County Department of Environment and Health, or whatever it is.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, well, if
I
it's
believe
implicit,
that's consistent with the point you made at
Yeah.
the meeting last week,
Yes.
correct?
Okay.
No
Yes, it
change
is.
since last week.
That's right.
They're still committed to doing that work as they were a week ago.
Sure.
We're still committed exactly to having these two documents work together to accomplish the whole demonstration project. So I didn't include a number of things which are included in the BCDHE, which are going to be done by them and not be done by
Okay.
CA or by whoever.
okay, the thing is, I just got this document this
Yeah.
week, so I didn't have
Okay.
it before. The other thing is that on this part, I was wondering, it seems that, and maybe you've discussed this too, Wynn, is that with regard to social acceptability of eco-toilets, I'm just wondering whether that would be a very interesting component, I think, of the analysis, of asking people, all the people who originally apply, and then those who've been accepted and actually do it, how their attitude changed, with regard to that, or what their attitude was at the beginning. Were they skeptical? Were they whatever? And then afterwards, were they still skeptical on what was the case? And that some of this could be prepared in a video for FCTV so that we could get the word out, basically, the experience with eco-toilets, in Falmouth as this progresses, to see just, to get, as a public education information kind of thing.
I'll also try to answer that.
Yeah.
This document we have here is part of the work which was originally included in the RFP. And all of the aspects, or almost all of the aspects that have to do with public acceptance, with publicity, with the idea we originally had of having some kind of survey or something like that, all of that was left out of this, and I have already spoken with a couple of members of the committee that after we get this through, after we get someone on board to do this task, the next task is to put together a supplementary RFP to do some of that work. We've not done that yet. I think it needs to be done. We need to think about that. But I've been advised that it would be best to get this through first, and then raise that issue afterward of what we're going to do about that. So that's the genesis of this thing. I agree with you. That's work that definitely needs to be done, but it goes beyond the scope of the manager of the project, basically.
Right. I'm just wondering then, if under this additional task 3, is that this additional research, this is at the discretion, maybe this is something else. Tom may elect to include the following, or maybe, what was the other language we used? Put in there, but not limited to, or something like that, to the following, and that's social dimension. I mean, it's not that, it's just that it isn't mentioned here. That's why I saw that it seemed to me to be a gap.
It could be all other duties as assigned as relevant to the organization and functioning of the Water Quality Management Committee might cover that.
There's room enough, it seems to me.
Yeah, I mean, that was the design, was to have it be flexible.
We
Okay.
didn't want
All
to
right,
involve this with things that the person was unable to do in the time that we have to pay
Right.
to have it done.
Right.
So there is going to be more money. Yeah. I could see why you might want to put it in there, but I think it's
Well, I mean, I'm just saying, I don't see it there, but if it's,
Right.
if it's in the vision,
Yeah.
it's in the
that's
vision.
something to be done, because I think it's, that's, all these other things are quite technical, and that's
You
more
can,
of a,
you can rest assured that I'm going to come back with it, with a proposal to the committee, and the committee can then shoot that proposal down and change it and do what they want to with it.
Right. Okay, any other comments or observations or motions or suggestions for amendments to this scope of work before us? If not, a motion to
I'll move approval.
approve?
Second?
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Jerry tells me it is not on the selectmen's agenda
Didn't see it.
for next Monday, so it'll be whenever they meet again, I guess. So hopefully we can
7 days later.
get it on the next one. Good. Lower Little Pond watershed collection system.
You want to tell Sia to come back?
Yeah, she can come back now.
See ya.
Tear her
All the income free.
tear her away from the television.
We got a copy of it.
All the income free. It was, I think it was even around, it was some cost in this.
Was it in the other one, last week's? Did we get this last week?
It came out fairly early. Just good time. There's a couple new numbers.
Okay. You're up.
All right. We talked about, Jeff
Just-
Gregg from GHD.
Yeah, there is the nationwide TV audience to remind who you are.
We talked last week about the presentation. I sent out costs to the group with the revised, modified 1A alternative, which was to look at the layout of the collection system, the gravity low-pressure grinder alternative without a pumping station in the Worcester Court area. And then, so we took that out, made that all low pressure, and then we reran the costs. Does everyone have the costs? And so we ran that and actually sent out tables that had how it compared, and essentially that alternative, by eliminating the pumping station and adding grinders, came out as pretty much a wash with the alternative 2A, which is all grinder pumps. I think it was slightly less, but in the grand scheme of things, they're essentially the same cost. So at this point, we're kind of at the decision point of what would the 1A versus the 2A. Those were the two alternatives, if I remember correctly, that were last on the table. And so we were looking for a decision, or direction, or recommendation for moving forward with 30% design on one of those two alternatives. And we've met with the town, the DPW, and some of the water quality group as well to talk about the two options. And there's a desire to continue with connecting gravity to some of the gravity system, and then building upon that, and then using grinder pumps in those other areas. But I guess I open it up to questions and whatever the decision-making process is for the water quality group with regards to the two alternatives on the table.
Okay, Jerry, maybe you could lay out the two and explain the DPW's view of this?
Well, in general, I think, and I thought the analysis came close, that gravity is definitely, all gravity is really is expensive and not needed in this particular case. And by the same token, you don't want to put all E1 pumps in, not E1, grinder pumps in, because, that can unduly increase maintenance and costs like that. So we had always, and Ray had always thought that a hybrid system was by far our best opportunity. Both have to be designed to appropriately, for the future and for the design service area. So I thought and I didn't bring it with me, I thought the costs were fairly straightforward. And in talking with Ray, he still feels the hybrid system is by far the best alternative for a variety of reasons.
And by hybrid, you mean use gravity where gravity makes sense?
Yes.
And use pressure, low pressure system with a grinder pump on each property
Right.
in the remaining area.
And we ruled out, it was at this meeting, that lower section of Worcester Court, because we found a deed restriction that we didn't think was worthwhile to go any further or try to fight it, because that small section could, I thought I saw a memo saying it only included X number of homes by grinder pumps, and it's.
Yeah, it increased, I believe, in the detail summary, it's only about 100 properties
It's on 100, yep.
difference. So you're changing out 100 properties, some of which were going to be on grinders, but you're changing out and adding 100 properties that were gravity now to a low-pressure grinder-type system, and eliminating the pumping station.
Well, for the benefit of the public who's trying to follow this, can you tell us how many would be on grinder and how many would be on gravity under this hybrid system you're talking about?
I believe the number, I believe it's almost a 50-50 split. I believe it's somewhere in the order of 610 grinder pumps, and then the balance, and I think it is, because we're only looking at properties that had water system of
It's also the
1,300
least expensive, I think, isn't it?
and change.
Out
So
of
it's
these
like,
choices.
so it's almost 1,400 properties total, so 600 out of 1,400, so
Okay.
it's less than half, it's just a
Okay.
little less than half.
600 on grinder? Or-
Yeah, about 600, I think it was 610 plus or minus.
Okay. Steve?
First off, thank you for, in a timely fashion, getting us the backup to all of your cost estimating work.
Yep.
I did take the time, as I am sort of in the similar business, went through it to look at the numbers and see if anything jumped out at me as a high number or a low number or whatever. These are all, for the level of where we're at, I think appropriate numbers. I might have a conversation with you about how you come up with some of the pump station numbers, but that's not, I think it boils out
Yeah.
a little bit later. But this gives everybody a good sense if they want to work with it, where money will be spent to put a system into the lower Little Pond area. I would suggest that the town already has in place a system that is in essence a series of interconnected pump stations to move flow from various areas, if you will, from Inner Harbor to Shivricks to Jones Palmer. I think there's a lot of benefit should we have to continue to extend the sewer system beyond the Little Pond area to having some pumping, some gravity pumping facilities at that sort of T-ticket end of the system, as well as in the mall, because it's just a natural low spot. So looking through this, and after the excellent presentation you gave last time, I would stand in support of proceeding forward with, I think it's modified alternative plan number 1A. Dropping Worcester Court out did not cost us any money.
No.
I think it saved us some money.
Saves some
It
money.
probably
Yeah.
makes it a little bit easier to actually implement the system. I would hope, Jeff, that as we proceed forward into the next stage of design here, there's borings, there's some other things that happen to the extent that a street can go on a gravity sewer or needs to go on to grinders, that we all appreciate that this is a close number right now. We're certainly not going to get rid of all gravity or have all grinders. There will be some flexibility as you learn a little more about the areas.
Yeah, well, as part of our scope, what we'll do, we won't be doing the borings and the survey at this point, but what we'd be doing is giving the plans and profiles to give people a greater perspective of what that's going to look like, essentially street by street as you work through the areas. So you'll see where the gravity is, you'll see where the low pressure systems are, at least in terms of the layout of the sewer. We're not going to be locating where lateral services and things like that. That's stuff that gets determined as part of design, and especially once you have survey done and things like that. What it'll do is it'll highlight the properties that have a grinder, that are projected to have a grinder pump as part of fitting onto a low pressure system, and then the rest would be gravity, where the pumping stations go, what the general pumping station layout would look like, where the force main routes will go, and then there will also be, as part of documents that we have to provide to the town, some additional evaluation of the capacity. I know there's been a lot of questions about that as well, so we've been working on that as well. But you'll see those layouts, and then, as Steve indicated, when you go into design and you line up your soil borings and your survey, you'll have a greater understanding of where your utilities are, what you're up against for groundwater conditions and things like that, and soil conditions, and then that may adjust where your system goes, or how far you can go with gravity, or how far you can go with low pressure and things like that. So there will be a flux when you get into that. That's the whole point of getting into
Steve,
One more small point, if I can. I don't know what you're using for presumed groundwater elevation, but the Board of Health has 1.7 throughout most of that area as the presumed groundwater elevation, unless you can prove that it's lower, and I don't think anybody's proved that it's lower. It's usually between 1.7 and 2. Every time a test pit gets done, it comes in from the Board of Health for any one of the peninsulas. It's pretty consistent.
So what we can do is too.
So if you want to look at what those gravity sewers and where you may have a cost for dewatering, your depths, I'd say 2 is a good number to be using.
I just have a point of information. You said something about leaving out part of Worcester Court. You're not leaving it out of the...
Getting rid of the pump station.
No,
Oh, that's what I thought you meant. Yeah, that's what I thought you meant.
And we'll replace those with the grinder pumps. Is that right? Is that?
Low pressure.
In that section.
In that section.
Yeah.
Did you want me
Just
to
a-
get a map out? I did bring a map.
Oh, no, well, yeah, I
that's
think, well, I remember.
Go ahead.
No, I remember the area, that was just something I wasn't clear on. So now, pumping station is gone, the low pressure systems will replace that small area there.
Correct.
So okay.
Yep.
Okay. Any other comments or?
Well, it sounded like Mr. Rafferty made a motion.
Well, I will make it a motion that we go to the Board of Selectmen, or whomever we need to go to, I don't know, we have to go to the Selectmen, or it's just us giving direction, to continue with the modified alternative plan number 1A of pump station at the mall site and at the upper portion of the T-ticket element, and the balance being on the grinder pumps as appropriate for efficiency and cost.
You got that, Carol?
Could you repeat that? I think I do have it actually.
I can do it like they do it at the end of the ads for cars. 12 months now, 17 months, it'll be 40 months.
It sounded like me.
No, I just said, I'm suggesting that that the committee
This is the motion. He's making a motion.
GHD, that the committee hereby directs GHD to proceed to continue to develop the modified alternative plan number 1A, as presented last week, discussed and modified tonight.
So I don't need all about the pump at the
No,
moment?
Nope.
that was useless commentary.
Okay.
Okay, do we have a second?
Ron's going to second it for me.
I have a question too, but
Oh,
I'll
can we get a
second it,
second
but then I
before
have a que-
we? Somebody.
You seconded.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, Ron.
I just have a question. So we have these 6, or actually 7 options, but now it's 6 again, because we changed 1A to eliminate that pumping station, right? So as this progresses, and eventually this will go out to bid as it proceeds, right? Is that right? Or is GHD would do the construction if this goes forward?
GHD is being tasked
Right.
to look at, on a schematic basis, for lack of a better word, what a sewer system looks like for the lower Little Pond area.
Right.
And to advance the layout of that system far enough to be able to have a reasonable understanding of what it will cost to design such a system, and what a reasonable expectation of the cost of such a system will be, so we can talk intelligently at town meeting. They're not
Okay.
doing a detailed design.
Right, okay. So then ultimately, we have come to the conclusion through this process of saying 1A is to proceed with that. And that in the end, once this is done and the detailed, or whoever does the detailed designing, I guess that would go through a bidding process and they may select a slightly different version. Is that right? Or this is just a best estimate now of what the best system would be, and that in the future, that if companies are interested, they could propose perhaps another one of these scenarios or something else because of cost, or however they may look at it. Is that possible?
Jerry?
The idea was that if we go through this level of effort, we have to make a decision if we continue with GHD or not. I mean, because it's up to 30% and it's in the contract that says we can. Or we can go out to solicit RFPs. You know, both options have pros and cons. I find it very unlikely we go this far and then decide that GHD made such a tremendous error that it would be a significant difference. It's 30%. Someone might change the type of grinder pump or something like that, but it's not going to be all of a sudden there's a breakthrough and we're
No,
going through
right,
something
right,
else.
right. No, I just concur with that.
I've got a question
Okay,
for
Matt.
Jerry. Jerry, so even if we did decide to go out to bid again for the implementing engineering,
For the full.
full engineering, the 1A, we're deciding to use 1A. It wouldn't change.
Yes,
If I can, I mean, all we've asked is these folks to take 1A forward, so we can go to town meeting. When it gets to the next step, this board has the option of saying, we're staying on this horse, the 1A horse, and that's what's going to go to final design. Or if we have other reasons or information in front of us, when we decide to make the next decision to go to the next stage, we could say, before you go do 1A, we want you to do whatever task.
So barring that, we're going forward with 1A.
So I would say some new information would need to come forward to the
Right.
board.
Okay.
That would change our opinion about what we have informed ourselves seems like a reasonable way to go forward at this time.
Right, right.
Okay. I'm just wondering, I think that this is, very logical in the process we've gone through. One thing that actually Steve had raised in an email exchange, Steve Rafferty had raised, is that when we start looking at dollars per pound of nitrogen removed, I mean, it's the same area, so it's the same, there's no issue here, but if the technology, denitrifying systems we haven't even looked at really in terms of this area because it's so densely, there may be a lot of reasons, but we don't know what the cost per pound of nitrogen would be to remove it with an alternative system, if it were, or a cluster system or something in this area. The reasons for I understand, we all understand the density and the issues with that, but we haven't stepped into that or even looked at that option in any serious manner as far like this, in this kind of, to this level at this point. And it's just something that may come up in time, but it's, I just wonder if, because the only reason I mentioned that particular system is because some of them have nitrogen reduction credit assigned to them, and that's critical for what we're doing at this point. Later on, others may reach that level. So it's just a question. I think that I agree that as far as central sewering goes, that we're coming to a very good understanding and a good choice. But then, if we step out of that, ultimately, is that something, in terms of dollars per pound of nitrogen, which is what Stephen mentioned.
I may surprise you a little bit with this, but I happen to agree with you. And I had this conversation with George Heufelder, in fact, yesterday. And we haven't given the on-site alternative nitrogen removal systems the attention we've given other things. And they were on our original list that we went to town meeting with. And it should be pursued in the fashion that we have pursued the others. And not at this meeting, but at a very soon meeting to come, I'm going to try to put together a proposal that does that, because you're absolutely right. For the Heights Mara Vista area, there's a lot of reasons why it wouldn't work. 5,000 square foot lots.
I know.
But for the rest of the town, for Wacoit, for a whole lot of areas, it's entirely possible that if it were economically feasible, it would be less expensive and possibly as effective as sewering. And we hope so. That's been our goal all along, to find things that would work, that cost less than sewering and don't have the impact. So that's where I personally would like to go with this, because the on-site has not gotten the attention it deserves.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, even for this area, maybe it's completely unrealistic to think of it even for this dense area. But we don't know exactly, because we haven't seen an analysis. And maybe it's a very quick thing to do. Maybe it's just an easy, okay, where are you going to put them? How's it going to work? How's it going to be hooked up? This kind of thing. Or is it just, I can't envision it exactly how it would work, but somebody might.
I think we're finding none of this stuff is simple and quick and easy.
Yeah.
And the aqua toilet's a good example. You came up what appeared to be a good idea, and you come to find out we're designing it as we go along, because the world hasn't gotten as far as we have. And that's somewhat the case for these on-sites too. There are a few out there that have been tested and done well. They haven't been tested to the point of putting 50 of them in the ground anywhere in the country, in this state. And
well, there are 1,500 of them on the Cape.
Well, we're talking about a number of different things here, but
particular vendors, I think.
Particular vendors, yeah. No one has come out and said we're approved for general use by DEP.
For 3 milligrams per liter of nitrogen.
Right, with the standards and all that. But so I think once again we're going to have to be the pioneers and put that in the ground and put it to the test. But you've been right about that it hasn't gotten the attention that it should.
My understanding is that 2 years from now, we hope to have most of those questions answered, and when we go ahead with the first stage, we will be able to say definitively that this or that would be the best way to move forward at that time. But we don't know yet.
True. See.
Two completely different things. First, on that issue, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't it true that we don't know that some alternative methods could turn out to be less expensive than this and acceptable to the town? But we can't afford not to do this from a standpoint of showing good faith to Mass DEP and the CWMP process. Otherwise, we would look like we were just pushing everything off indefinitely into the future with tests. So we have to commit part of the town to a traditional approach that is approvable and will work. And the second comment I want to make on these choices. I'm not going to stand in the way of this, but I just think, again, correct me if I'm wrong, I want to go on the record, that what I've heard offline is that since these were, and this is the costs in table 5.1, since this is, what I don't know what you call this, a 5% design or something, there are error bars on these numbers by necessity. It doesn't mean that Jeff didn't do an excellent job, it's just that no one expects 1A to cost exactly $50,880,000.00. That would be ridiculous.
Yep.
And within those error bars, essentially all 6 of these cost the same. And that in fact those error bars are so large that my offline objections about present worth and 20-year lifetime are purely academic. And so the only real sewer engineers here are Jeff and Nate and Steve, and we're essentially deferring to their good engineering judgment to say go with that. It's not that we actually know what we're doing. other than we know that these are good guys.
You had to disclose that to our nationwide television.
We were covering up quite well until you hit the cap. Some excellent points. But I want to come back, and I actually agree with Ron and agree with you that we've not taken the sort of on-site denitrifying systems far enough to understand them. But underlying this, we did early on, and you're right to bring up, Ron, we eventually need to be able to compare apples to apples. And at some point, it comes down to dollars per pounds of nitrogen removed. I would suggest that to date, perhaps with the lower Little Pond sewering option, we are further along in getting to a point where we could say for every pound of nitrogen removed, using this method, what the cost is. We have yet to sit down and really lay out tables of what are the present worth or the recurring expenses for some of the other options, and much like that would have to happen, I think, with the on-lot. You would hate to say that we've spent money for GHD to do work, we appropriate money to design sewers, but I think this committee's shown enough fortitude, and although Steve thinks that people don't know what they're doing, I do think they know what they're doing on this committee. You know, if we as a collective group a year from now have concrete, solid information in front of us, and we truly believe that there's a better way to take care of Lower Little Pond, I don't think this committee is going to flinch from telling the DEP that we want to change in project form put out there, because we've got a better thing, we know how to implement it, and it's going to be cheaper and better in the long run. My gut instinct says because of so much nitrogen that's got to be removed from the Lower Little Pond watershed and the density of dwellings in the Lower Little Pond watershed, that it's going to be hard, even if you went to the on-site denitrifying systems, which at best might get 80%, and more typically get closer to the 50% plus or minus value, that leaves us with having to find not only the remaining 50% from those homes, but the other percentage, which we already know is sort of standing out there at Little Pond anyway. So this is a tough watershed and estuary. To think that we are making a bad, well, it's tough estuary to believe that on-site denitrifying systems could be fit in. We learned a lot by looking at some septic stuff. So I don't think that we're going down a path where we're wasting the town's time, energy, or money. But we have to keep our eyes open, and should there be a different answer, be prepared to step in with it.
I'd just like to add to that, we're not wasting the town's money, it seems to me, doing any of the demonstration projects. Even if we don't use them, we need to do them in order, and it's not a
I
lot
was just
of
saying
money.
designing sewers without knowing yet whether or not a denitrifying system would work in the Lower Little Pond. I mean, we need to get to those numbers.
We need to get to those numbers. We need all of the.
But to go to Lower Little Pond, the cost of cleaning up Lower Little Pond will be, if there were denitrifying systems, plus something else, plus something else.
That's
So
right.
you'd have to come up to the whole, how do you get rid of all those pounds at the end of the day?
I think even a bigger challenge would be that if this demonstration project, as the aquaculture demonstration goes forward, there could be a big surprise there. You know, we don't know. Well, we don't know what's going to happen, but
We'd be thrilled.
yeah, that's what I mean. You know. So it's another aspect. We have to follow all of these paths, I think. So.
In a way, Wynn's brought up a good point. This is just another demonstration project. in some respects. We're proposing to put something in the ground that includes technology that has not been put in the ground in Falmouth before.
Well, limited, there's some in Woods Hole.
Well, there's 8, okay, thank
Yeah.
you. But in terms of my point, I think we're talking about something new and different for a lot of
large
people.
number of houses.
And the pounds per dollar per pound factor is also unknown for this mechanism. So we're going to learn from all these things.
Okay.
There's a motion on the floor. Any
And a
further
second.
comment? Any further
There was a
discussion?
second, too.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We got it.
Okay.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thanks, Jeff.
Usually they take 6 months or a year to do this. He did this in. He did this in what? 6 weeks? 3 weeks?
Well, it wasn't all me. I had a lot of help back in the office,
Yeah.
so they don't get the awful circumstance of being out here presenting to you, but
Extend our thanks to everybody back in your office
I
now.
have and I will again.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very good.
Boone's Pond Inlet widening, presentation by GHD. Nate?
I'm going to excuse myself, is that all right?
Feel free. Take the rest of the night off.
You're in good hands. See you guys. See you soon.
His?
Alrighty, thank you very much. My name is Nate Weeks from
He
GHD,
just said he couldn't do it that fast.
for the worldwide public out there.
It's Tuesday morning.
Where is the camera?
That's why I wanted to.
No,
One there and one there.
Okay, because last
Right.
time I presented,
Okay,
there
yeah.
was a videographer.
Right.
Yeah, let me make one point, and it's an apology to the committee, but it was forced by the fact that it wasn't until Tuesday noontime that this had been vetted to the point where he could begin to put together this presentation, which is the reason you didn't all get it 48 hours ahead, which is the reason we're not going to be able to vote on it tonight. It was just, there was no time to make that happen, and no matter what you did.
Yep, good, thank you, Eric. Yeah, the project has moved along, but, and I have quite a bit to present to you this evening, and I'd like to go ahead and get started. This is the Bournes Pond Inlet opening task of the preliminary design project that we're working on. This aerial photo shows the existing opening. Oh, I should do that.
Go ahead, don't
Yep,
stop.
good. I have some handouts here, which are the slides, and they're fairly good size so that you can read them and take notes if you'd like.
Good.
Nate, when you're all said and done, will you transmit them to me somehow so I can post them?
Sure, in fact,
I have the
Jerry's
electronic version.
got a disc with them on them.
Thanks.
And so what I am going to present is some information about the project team and scope, hydrodynamic modeling to optimize the inlet opening size, identification and screening of 4 alternative scenarios, and the cost development of the 2 best scenarios, quite a detailed summary of permitting conditions, and then what says here recommendations, but it's really next steps, I think, is the slide that I've got there. Here is the project team. It was Eric and Virginia from the committee, Jerry, Ray, and Peter McCartney. I have a hard time with his last name. McCartney. Thank you. From DPW, Jeff and myself from GHD, John Ramsey and Trave Ruthven from Applied Coastal Research and Engineering, and they were the ones that have done the hydrodynamic modeling, and beta engineers Mark Gershman. And I was pleased to learn that Mark and Peter used to work together at a previous engineering firm several years ago, and when they made an acquaintance, they were very glad to meet up with each other. The scope that we're following is we're doing hydrodynamic modeling to optimize the inlet opening. We're evaluating alternative inlet openings and bridge types, developing preliminary design information and costs, and then developing permitting strategy, summarizing findings. That's what we've been tasked to do. The hydrodynamic modeling, I'm not going to get into a lot of detail about it because quite honestly, I can't. It's really John Ramsey who is very much the expert on this, and I'm sure you've heard him speak about the hydrodynamic modeling of the water bodies. What they have done is updated the existing RMA-2 hydrodynamic model that was used as part of the estuaries project. And so this is a figure that's right out of the estuaries project for Great Green and Bourne's Pond. So here's the Bourne's Pond area, and this grid system is the way that they divide up the pond and do the hydrodynamic modeling.
Nate, what's the specialty for Beta Engineers?
Bridge building.
Bridge.
Oh,
Also, as part of this task was additional data collection at the inlet. And they went out and they took elevation information of that area, as well as some new tide information. And they've done multiple model runs of that model to optimize the inlet and to develop preliminary design information. As part of our work with the whole team and through several progress meetings at the DPW offices, we developed 4 scenarios. The first is a single span bridge. Second is a double span bridge. Third is a new opening that would be with additional culvert bridges to the east of the existing bridge. So we would make use of the existing bridge and put in some culverts to increase the opening. And scenario 4 is a culvert bridge comprised completely of 5 culverts. And so I'm going to go over all of them briefly here. This is a slide that illustrates the existing bridge, which is right here, the existing opening, which has about a nominal size of about 50 feet. And the bridge goes over it. You can see the opening right here. And armoring here, the bridge abutments are built on pilings, and this is all information that was provided by the record drawings of the existing bridge.
Could I just ask, can I ask a question? Okay. Yeah, just wondering, do you know what the rationale was originally for this width of the opening?
John Ramsey does, and he will be summarizing it.
Okay,
We have reviewed the environmental impact report for this bridge, and my understanding of the way it's been related to me is that that environmental impact report proposed a larger bridge, one that was in the neighborhood of 100 feet, and at some point it got reduced down to 50 feet.
Okay.
So this is the existing, this is what we've been working with. It is a bridge that has been inspected by Mass DOT, and it's functioning well. Scenario 1 would be a single span bridge, to demolish the existing bridge and to put in a single span that is approximately 97 feet wide. And to do that, the existing bridge would be demolished. This jetty right in here would be maintained, and the jetty here on the east side that is right in this area right now would be demolished, and a new one would be built over here. And a single bridge, single span bridge would be put here. Because it's a single span, the height of this beam would have to be about 3 feet higher than the span that, or the beam that was needed for the existing bridge. And if we keep the height between the water and the bottom of the beam the same, which was always the basic assumption that we would do, we weren't going to increase it because there has been a strong desire expressed by people living on the pond that they don't want to have a lot of boat traffic going in and out of this opening. So that opening would stay the same, and so three feet wider beam would put this roadway 3 feet higher up in the air. And as a result, when you have the roadway 3 feet higher up in the air, this whole causeway would have to increase for a certain distance for that slope to run out. And when you take a look at it in the plan view, it would mean that there would have to be retaining walls built in here to retain that higher road. So what I'm relating to you are some of the details that come out when you take a close look at these types of scenarios. And that was one of the negative aspects of this type of bridge, were the retaining walls that would have to be built and the increased work to actually build up the roadway to approach this particular bridge. Scenario 2 is a double span bridge, which may be able to make use of some of the bridge abutments right here. It would demolish, again, the jetty in this section right here and move that, and construct a new jetty out here. And it would utilize a center pier, which would maintain the height of this beam at the same height as the existing bridge. And this is a cross-section of what it would look like right here. So it would be very similar to the existing bridge, but it would be wider, and there would be a central pier in the middle of it.
How wide is it?
About 95 feet in this area. There's a little bit more friction.
Oh, I thought you said the other one was 97 feet. Did I get that wrong?
There you go, that's it.
Okay, so they're about the same.
They're really about the same, and I may be wrong when I say 93. I think this is a little bit wider than the single span.
Yeah, I guess you could say this is 97, the other one's 95. Let's get the pier, have the same cross-sectional area for both car body.
Now, Nate, the wider they are, the more flow you get through them, I'm assuming? More volume?
Oh, yeah, well, that's, yeah, I'm sorry, I probably have jumped too far.
I don't
ahead.
know, I'm just...
The reason why we're opening them up is to increase the tidal exchange with the pond. And by increasing that tidal exchange and cutting down the friction losses that are occurring in the very narrow channel right now, we'll get more tidal flushing and therefore better tidal exchange between the pond and the sound. And with that better tidal exchange, we get better tidal flushing and less retention time of the water up in the pond, which therefore would reduce its nitrogen sensitivity.
Effectively lower the TMDL.
No, at the same time, does that
Freeze it.
does it allow more water in, or is it just the velocity that increases?
It allows more water in, and it also allows more water out. If you take a look at that inlet, and you'll see a lot of turbulence when it's coming through there, when you've got a flowing tide.
Yeah.
And that turbulence is, to an engineer, is head loss. And when you have head loss, it doesn't move as much water in, and it doesn't move as much water out. It's like throttling a valve on a plumbing fixture.
Just one question. In terms of widening it, and there's more water going in and out, does it also move up further into the estuary in terms of the impact, further north? Or is it just more exchanging more in the lower portion mostly? Or is it, how does that work out? I don't know.
Well, it has an effect up into the upper reaches as well, and that analysis is observed with that flow net that you saw.
Okay.
Because if you have a large effect down there, then that effect is felt all the way up.
Okay.
If I might, Nate, Ron, did you attend the charrette that was done by SMAS? We did it at the library.
Yeah.
They came and they did a charrette. At one point, they showed a color-coded graphic loop that showed what was happening in Bourne's Pond at present in terms of tidal flux in and out. And then they reran it showing if this inlet was opened up to show the extent of where it came in and out. And that translated into an area that was getting the necessary flushing. So we can remember that. It was almost, it was a very dramatic little loop that they ran. And helped to really kind of put in perspective. Because they didn't have a similar one, but they did have inside the reports, if you read them, there's a similar graphic for Little Pond as well, but it's not as dramatic. It's not as clear that, well, I should say, the the impact of opening up a little pond in terms of the area that seems to get flushing isn't as significant as this one was. So that's why we've been working on this one. That's how I remember that. I mean, it was a very strong visual.
Yep.
And when John Ramsey and his group does their work to take a look at optimizing the size, I mean, ideally, if you opened it completely up, you would have the best exchange. If you opened it completely up, it would then shoal up, and you would have the situation that you have right here. So the optimal size is one that can be maintained or maintains itself by having enough velocity to scour out the sand that would be deposited there and not prevent that. So it's trying to find something that, for lack of a better word, is sustainable, where you don't have to do a lot of dredging to keep it open, but it is as large as possible to maintain maximum tidal exchange. Good, that was a good question, and I jumped right over the whole reason why we're doing this. Scenario number 3 is to maintain the existing bridge right here, and just to the east of it, as close as possible, open up and put in 2 culvert sections that would look like this. And in the plan view, you can see that there's a large island in the middle, which the island would be right here. And there's a real drawback to that, because you may get preferential flow through one channel or the other. You can also get shoaling inside the culvert as well. And hydrodynamically, it's not as efficient as a single span or a double span. This one was screened out.
And just out of curiosity, no difference whether you put it on the east or the west. You just happen to choose the east because of the way the jetties line up right now?
There was quite a bit of discussion about the east or the west.
Sorry?
If you take a look to the east, you can see that the width of the roadway and the lane map here is less. And also, as you go to the west, you get into some nesting plover situations. And so it is believed that there would be less objection in going to this direction, and it would be more economical because there's less excavation involved as well. There was quite a bit of decision amongst the project team, and Eric and Virginia had quite a bit of insight in past history, and we all came to that conclusion and consensus.
A lot more public beach utilized on the west side by far.
And then scenario number 4 grew out of the idea of, well, if we're going to put in some culvert, if we were thinking of culverts as part of scenario 3, wouldn't it be useful to envision the whole span being a group of culverts? And so we developed this scenario, and it would look like this in profile and like this in plan view. It does make for a little bit of a wider channel because you need to take into account these center piers. And this was one that was retained for detailed evaluation. There were several considerations here. We did decide that as part of the evaluation that we would actually put these culvert sections on a foundation that would be anchored in with pilings. There is a lot of concern. Every 50 or so years, there's a major hurricane that comes through. And John Ramsey has photographs of some of the hurricanes that have come through, some of the damage that's been done to these land masses for these particular ponds. And if you have culvert sections that are not well secured as part of one unit, a hurricane can move them. And that's something that you don't want. So that is the reason why we went with such a large foundation there.
I think there used to be a
So we went
hotel
through
there.
a screening process, really, as part of this, similar to what we're doing now, talking about the pros and the cons. And we decided to retain this one, the double span bridge, and the multiple culvert bridge for cost development. This one was screened out because hydraulically it was not as efficient, This one was screened out because it would be 3 foot higher and it would extend the impacts and the cost off the bridge onto the adjoining roadways.
Right.
So we then move forward to develop costs for number 2 and number 4. And the costs are identified here.
Just if I can, under the multiple culvert option or the double span bridge option, is the roadway stay at roughly the same elevation that they currently are? Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Unlike the very first one, they are more or less mirroring the road elevation that's there already.
Yeah, so there would be less impact, and that's a good point, I didn't point that out,
No,
that, yeah,
just-
these two would stay the same.
Yeah.
So would number 3, the one that would reuse the.
But we got
existing-
rid of that already.
Yeah, but we got rid of that one,
Yeah.
Okay, good. So here is the way that we've summarized the costs with the bridge and the road work cost, which is obviously the biggest cost. And within this cost is a lot of the methods of construction of having to build a coffer dam. You know, with the existing bridge still there, a coffer dam would have to be extended out, obviously in plan view, to be able to construct this portion of the bridge. And then that coffer dam would be relocated to allow this portion of the bridge. So that is where the majority of the costs are right there, and a lot of the methods of construction. With the jetties, there would have to be jetty modification and armoring. And I'll go back to you know, some of the plan views which show some of the details of the jetty and also the dredging and beach nourishment as well. Obviously dredging and beach nourishment. Permitting allowance, we're allowing $300,000 for permitting, and I'll get into some of the considerations there and why that allowance is what it is. Design, as you know, we typically do design and engineering during construction and fiscal legal, and that's typically a factor of 25% that we allow. We were asked to break out the design from that, and so we broke out the design at about 10% of the sum of these items, or for about $400,000. And then engineering and during construction would be this much, but there's also an allowance in there that includes fiscal and legal work that would be needed as well.
Do you mind, Troy, if we ask little questions in the middle of this?
Sure.
The dredging and beach nourishment, is that a one-time thing, or is that an annual or every few years sort of thing?
That would be a one-time thing as part of this construction project. The maintenance costs are pretty much the same for all of them, and we are developing, you know, the long-term maintenance costs that would be needed to, you know, to maintain the bridge and the jetties and to do the maintenance dredging. Maintenance dredging is being done right now. It typically is done by the county dredge that comes in periodically, dredges it off, and, you know, uses the sand for beach nourishment in a couple of different areas. John Ramsey, with his modeling, has very specific recommendations on where that beach nourishment could be placed and how much dredging would be done. But as part of this project, there is obviously dredging and beach nourishment that would need to take place, and we've accounted for it here.
At this level of cost estimating, Nate, what's the, I'm looking at these two designs, and I'm trying to imagine, A, how they actually get built, and B, what the duration might be to determine if there's any difference in time or duration between the two of them, because your cost estimates at that very first line from which everything else kind of flows
Right.
aren't that far apart. So it seems to imply that they each take the same level of time to build.
There's been quite a bit of discussion. This one would have a little bit more difficult sequence of construction because you can see that it's a common foundation that goes all the way underneath it. So it's a little bit harder to separate out one half from the other. This is easier to separate out one half from the other. And I can show it a little bit better.
Because during any construction, you have to maintain flow.
You have to maintain flow, that's for sure. And that flow would be maintained with a coffer dam. So if we go to scenario 2, and in the plan view, this is pretty much where the existing bridge is right now. So the first step would be to build a coffer dam which would extend all the way down here and up, and would separate out that area. Looks to be water flowing in and out of here in the way it does, but then that dredging, that excavation, that jetty construction, and that bridge construction would all take place in what we call in the dry, you know. It would be dewatered, it wouldn't be on barges or anything like that, but it would all be dried, and then that would be constructed. Once that was constructed, we would then relocate the cofferdam from this side over to this side. This would be demolished right here, and this would be worked. With this one, it's not quite as easy. I suppose it could be made easier by putting in an even number of culverts, and there are some ways around that. It would mean doing the foundation in 2 different pieces. The main thing that kind of surprised us with this one, we thought that this one would be less expensive. But because of the foundation, there really isn't any cost advantage with this one. It is a wider channel. There are some inefficiencies with these piers. When you have multiple piers like this, you do have the concern that you can have blockage and structural damage if there was a large boat or tree or something that was lodged up against it. You could have it, you know, with other bridges as well too, with respect to the height restriction, but you have a little bit more restriction with this. So the costs are very similar. One is slightly larger, and that's what we're really looking at as the 2 that we've developed costs for, and the cost components.
Jerry?
I believe that I think Peter had the most experience, at least in that meeting, other than John Ramsey. But this last one gets into considerably more effort with dredging and maintaining it, because you have, I thought you said they were about the same, but I think there was a lot more concern about trying to maintain 5 different channels and differential scouring, you know, and just getting underneath the channels and things like that.
Yeah.
Good point, yeah. That was a drawback with all of the ones that use culverts, because when sand deposits in there, it's just very difficult to get it out of there.
And weren't you implying when you rejected the one that involved the bridge and 2 culverts, that because of the differential flow, there's also a vicious circle that once sand builds up in one of them, then there's even less flow in that one, so maybe more sand builds up?
There is the potential, yeah, greater potential for differential flow when you have the multiple.
So that would apply
routes.
to this as well?
That would apply for this as well.
Win?
When each of those is properly constructed, is there any difference in their ability to withstand hurricanes, like the 38 hurricane or something like that?
I would say that we tried to make them as apples and apples to each other, and one of the steps that we took was by putting in that foundation, which had quite a bit of cost, but did make them as structurally rigorous as a more conventional bridge.
Did you guys have any estimates of nitrogen removal?
Well, that, we raised that point and discovered that it had not been part of the earlier considerations as far as who was going to provide that and when. That has now been addressed, and it will be provided just as soon as John Ramsey can get it to us, which will be before the end of the month. Yeah, that was the key question for this, as for all the other options. Dollars per nitrogen pound, and vice versa. So yeah, that will be provided. I just think, go ahead.
I was saying the MEP reports do talk about that specifically, and, but not on a design basis.
Right, that was sort of a generic thing, and this is going to be the on-the-ground detailed model with as good numbers as can be had. Right.
So from earlier talks I've heard by John Ramsey, and from what you just said, so essentially, John Ramsey already knows or almost knows the answer to that question. The pounds of nitrogen this is expected to remove.
I don't think
I mean, he
so.
could easily calculate that from the modeling he's already
I
done.
think, if I can, I think what happens is the TMDL changes because a portion now is getting tidally flushed. Okay? There's no need to sewer or do other things for those people that are contributing to that lower portion.
Right,
So it's a shift in that number.
right.
Okay.
But it can be, I think it can still be
You
expressed
can
as
still express it. You can still express it. I'm just
dollars per pound removed.
trying to be clear on the
And,
law.
and the interesting thing about this meeting tonight is that we essentially have that for this now. We have the dollars, right?
Pretty close. We have a
Pretty
number to work
close.
with.
Close enough for,
A better number than we've had before.
right.
Right.
And you should be able to get from John Ramsey pretty soon the dollars per
The
pound,
area-
I mean the
the
pounds.
Pounds, right,
And
The
then
area
we can do
relief.
the division.
right.
And we also now have it to the same accuracy for the sewers for Little Pond.
Yes,
Well, we will soon, yeah.
Yes, we're getting close.
Yeah, yeah.
yes.
It would be
This is real-
interesting
Yeah,
to do the
real
two
progress.
divisions and the subtraction.
Right, well, we,
You're right to note that we're making progress.
I almost hesitate to bring this up. It's not the first time I thought about it, but when Brian Howes was in the library talking about TMDLs, and he specifically said that the lower quarter, third of these, the homes, the most, I guess the most southerly homes would not need to be sewered.
On
and-
Grape Pond.
Was
Yeah,
that specifically Great Pond?
Again, come back to the colored
Yep,
things that he has.
Yeah.
And you look at each one of the ponds, you can see where the tidal flushing is occurring. And you could almost draw a line and say, there's no need to go below that point.
but that
Yeah,
wasn't the case for Little Pond.
You know, there's one for Little Pond, but it's not a very big area when you get all said and done. So you could come back, and we could in the final analysis say, let's take a group of streets off the lower end of that sewer system. We could.
I thought
What if the people just said, you know, we want to be
Well-
part of it?
At some point, there's a point of
Yeah.
diminishing returns where the political cost of somebody saying, why didn't I get a sewer, overwhelms the
We also
fact that
gotta
you have to
see if
pay to
we
give
can
them a
get
sewer.
this thing through. And, you know, we think it will go through, but there's a lot of people that have healthy skepticism.
Some skepticism on this one, yeah.
Yeah,
But you're
so,
right.
Because
and that will be a
because of the
real
permitting.
learning curve.
I thought for
permitting
Gre- I thought for
Oh,
Gre-
this will have difficulty getting through? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
The permitting process is going to be
Oh,
fairly
okay, right,
involved,
right, right.
fairly lengthy,
Yeah,
and that's
yeah.
why you got 300,000 in that line item for that. So, you know, as Eric said earlier this evening, everything we look at turns out to be more complicated than we
Right, right.
originally thought. So this is promising, but we've still got some significant hurdles to go through. And I think if you walk through the permitting process strategy, that will begin to give people a sense of
Yeah,
of
Steve.
those issues.
If you get the number from John Ramsey and the dollars per pound removed by this is in excess of that for the sewers at Little Pond, why would you spend the money on permitting? Because then you know at least one thing's better, the other ones might be even better.
Well,
You're certainly not going to use one that's worse.
it'll come back to this committee for that very conversation,
Yeah.
once we have real numbers from John Ramsey, to have that
Right.
conversation. Comparing it to the Little Pond per house cost is probably not a good parallel, because if you were ever going to sewer as far as Bourne's
It would be
Pond,
more.
you got a whole lot more infrastructure to deal with than you do at Little Pond.
Right.
But coming back,
They're also-
But sometimes when you look at numbers, they're so far apart,
Right,
where
right.
you can do a little bit more.
If this comes
Eyeballing
if this comes up at $50,000 a house that we're saving from sewering,
You stop.
it may not be worth it.
Yeah,
Won't be worth it.
it's part of the permitting
I need to
costs.
point out, we've sort of already done this, please. If you go back to all of the stuff in the first wastewater management plan before it got massaged again, there's a lot of effort in there that says, for this inlet widening, this is the sort of number. There's a little bit of a ballpark around how many homes are or aren't in. And so this thing remain going forward because on the face of it,
It was close.
appeared to be an efficient way to resolve it. I don't have the numbers in front of me, Nate, perhaps you'll remember them, but this number right here is not suddenly, I recall it was a few million. It wasn't gonna be $1 million to open up Bourne's Pond. It was gonna be several $1 million to open up Bourne's Pond. And so this number is not suddenly a multiple of that number, making us think that we're going in the wrong direction.
Fair enough.
It was pretty close to this. I can't remember whether it was
Yeah,
4.5 or 6.5.
Yeah, the review committee
was in this
talked about
range, right?
It was,
5.
yeah, it was right in this range. It was about 5 million.
5 million, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, so back then, 5 million seemed like it was a cost-efficient way to solve it at the lower end against what we knew for sewer costs,
Good point.
okay? And now we're getting better and better detail.
Right, Ron.
Now, as I recall from the meeting we had with the Conservation Commission where John Ramsey presented, I thought he said it was almost the same. Basically, in terms of the savings for sewering from the bridge, that cost would be equal to the construction of extending the sewer system. I thought he said it was really close, that what this 5 million will buy us in terms of maintenance and everything versus the 5 million we could put into sewering, for example, that it was, in terms of nitrogen, it was pretty close. I thought that...
It might be easier to find an effluent discharge point, though, for this than anything else.
Right, I think that's speculation. I think we should move on with the facts of this situation.
Yep. Permitting strategy is, there is a fair amount of concern of the permitters to be able to do this. And in fact, there is now a Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs nutrient management work group that has been set up. And it was set up in response to the recent county effort to submit an ENF for this very project before it was developed at all, with the hope that because possibly a persuasive argument could be made that this was such a beneficial project that they ought to be able to waive some of the permitting requirements. And they didn't waive the permitting requirements. In fact, there were more red flags that went up than if it was just a traditional opening project. Mainly because there were questions and claims that, okay, there would be the need for less sewering and there would be benefits there. And the regulators felt that before they could give a go-ahead for that type of approach, they would want to see a pretty detailed monitoring plan to be able to monitor it and to be able to demonstrate it. So as a result of that ENF being withdrawn because it wasn't sufficient to make it through the process, Executive Office of Environmental Affairs has gone ahead and set up this work group, and there's now been two meetings. First was a large meeting that had a lot of different people in it just to talk about the issue. Then it was narrowed down to the work group, and I'm a member of that work group.
When you went to?
Along with Bob Duncanson, the town of Chatham, Tom Cambereri, London Langley, Brian Dudley, Jeremy Bell from DER, Mike Hickey, DMF, Steve McKenna, Coastal Zone Management, Allison Lesher from DCR, Nicholas Savalas from MEPA, and Vandana Rayo from the Executive Office.
We can only imagine what it would be like if they hadn't whittled it down.
This is a working group.
It was a very good meeting, the last one that I went to, but I do caution you that because there is increased focus on these type of projects, there is going to be some questions. And so the first step in this permitting strategy is to develop support from this group for this project. And right now we are developing some much better information than was prepared the first time and submitted to them. So we're much further along. One of the obvious things that they have all recommended for any of the projects that come in front of them is to convene a pre-submittal meeting and get everybody on board. And then they've said that for this type of a project, which there have been many inlet opening projects submitted previously, none of them have been trying to claim this same sort of nutrient removal credit, which makes this a little bit more challenging. But they say that this project should be able to succeed with a expanded environmental notification form, and which would need to include some of the additional evaluations that would typically be part of a larger thing. And from that, it would be expected to pass. But I think that we would need to expect that there would be some special conditions that would come with the approval. With an improved MEPA process, then that would then allow the town to proceed to more permitting, and that would be the notice of intent and order of conditions with CONSCOM and DEP, 401 water quality certification, Chapter 91 licensing, 404 permit through the Corps of Engineers, coastal zone management consistency, and then of course natural heritage for the endangered species. So those are the main permits, the main items. The pre-submittal meeting would touch base with all of them. I would think, you know, there would be a lot of scrutiny with the local CONSCOM, and they would need to be brought in early, and they would also need to come into contact with the state regulators so that the state regulators can let them know of other projects like this that are going on, and there are other ones on the Cape that are going forward as well. So that is a thumbnail sketch of the strategy. It would take, if you look at it, and a reasonable expectation would be 3 years, 2 to 3 years to get through this. And that would also include detailed design as well. So the permitting and the detailed design tend to go hand in hand. You try to do as much permitting as you can before you commit yourself to doing a lot of detailed design. Because you don't want to spend money that the permitters will then say, oh, let's do it a different way. So that is the permitting strategy.
Great. One thing we learned, by the way, is that SRF money is not necessarily available for this kind of project. It would be a case of first impression for the SRF folks, apparently, for someone to come in and say, we would like to use SRF money for this because it is part of our nitrogen mitigation strategy. So we may find out how that goes. Right.
I just wanted, there's some questions about material science. But with the bridges, if there is this 1938 type hurricane or a serious hurricane, this isn't built to withstand that, right? This would be lost, probably.
No, it is.
No,
Or is it?
Maintained, yeah, because there were several bridges that went through that hurricane.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or something like that, or whatever.
Well, I
Sandy
mean,
or
there's
something.
always,
You don't know, I'm just saying that,
there's always
but that's the
more,
idea.
yeah.
Because I was wondering then too, is that, I don't know about the science of bridges and the materials and things, but is there something that could be made that's like breakaway, that would withstand normal storm conditions and provide the strength for the road to go over it? But if we got a big storm, we'd assume that it would break up and then we'd come and bring the pieces and put them back together again, or whatever it might. Is there anything like that? I don't know if, your engineer might know, but.
Typically when you build something, you really want to build it so that it withstands those sort of things. It's important to keep in mind that that landmass is still quite low, and when you get this type of surges that you get with the hurricanes, and particularly it happened back in '38, the water just comes right over the top of the road.
Right, sure.
And often, and some of the pictures that John Ramsey showed, is that the road and the land was gone, and there was the bridge kind of standing there in the water.
Right, I've seen that one.
You've seen those.
Right.
Yeah.
And so the bridge is stronger than the land, is one thing. And quite honestly, the bridge is more difficult to replace than the land. The land, you just bring in the trucks and create new land, or put it back to where it was.
Okay. Comments, questions, Matt?
So the next step is that we approve one of these bridges. For sake of discussion, I move that we approve scenario 2.
Okay. Then
Second.
moved and seconded to
Can we do it tonight?
to recommend, yeah. Well, we actually, if no one objects, we could do it tonight, but in point of fact, this handout and this show wasn't available to us until tonight, so anybody who felt like objecting would have good grounds.
I move that it's the sense of this committee that after we've had it for, between now and the next meeting, that we're going to vote on option 2.
Yeah, I can see how we'd want to
No, I mean,
postpone the decision until,
articulate, I mean, why do you like 2? Why do
Why?
you like 2?
because it has less, it sounds like to me that it has less maintenance issues, sand removal.
Looks easier to repair too,
Yeah.
which is another way of expressing the issue that Ron brought up.
Right.
It looks, it's probably cheaper too than 1. I would think. Yeah.
This is the lowest cost of our cost estimating, but quite honestly, the numbers
It's
are
not-
the same.
Matt did make a motion, was it seconded?
Yeah, I said
A
that.
second.
Try a vote, see what happens.
Okay, well, any further discussion?
Only one further question is going through my mind. If you had sea level rise within the lifetime of this bridge by a foot, let's say, would that affect the would that change the effectiveness of it? Would we have to worry about anything?
That'd be a big advantage of scenario 2.
I think it would be, yeah.
More water would get in.
No, you could raise the bridge, a lot easier than cutting all the culverts and raising that.
I would suggest that final design has to factor in something for sea level rise.
If, with sea level rise, I believe that you would be getting better tidal flushing up into the estuaries, but you would probably also be having more damage to the roadways in the earth as well.
Yes.
Whether you would be allowed to increase the height of the earth, there would be a question that would have to be tackled at some future time, and it is one of those very difficult to answer questions related to how we're going to deal with those sort of things.
But those issues would be the same whether you pick 2 or 4.
They would, yeah.
Whereas the ability to raise the bridge physically seems to be different between the two.
Yeah.
All right, it's been moved and seconded to recommend option 2. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
I have
Option 2.
this is not to the motion at all. At this point here, we are, in essence, going down the path of doing what we wanted to do so far, correct?
Yeah.
Will we then roll into the Springtown meeting appropriation, money associated with permitting and design?
Right.
For this? Okay. So in some ways, what we need to keep our sights on is a number in the $700,000 range associated with this option at Springtown meeting to go down that whole path of 1,000 permits and, death by a million nicks.
Right, yeah, the 700,000 is the number we would,
It's a floating number right now.
well, it's a fixed number now.
Yeah,
We've actually gotten to that point where it's a fixed number. So we're going to go, presuming that the cost per kilowatt pound, sorry, whatever you're trying to do here, nitrogen pound, whatever it is, presuming that those numbers justify continuing, that's what we would continue with.
Would we also be adding over the next couple of months the Little Pond widening?
Yes. Well, no, widening, no.
No, widening, no.
Little Pond collection area, yeah, with Little Pond widening. It's on our list, but I think we picked this one to go ahead with because there was more community uncertainty by adjacent landowners about that one. This one, every input we've gotten from the neighbors was they loved the opening before and they'd like a bigger one.
It's a bigger bang for the buck, we think.
And a bigger bang for the buck.
And it gets to a part of town that we wouldn't be to for 20 years maybe.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So there was
for
more-
reasons, it seemed like moving ahead with this one first
Yeah.
made sense.
So there was more negative
Separate.
comment on Little Pond.
Oh, there have actually been a number
Yeah.
of negative comments.
And that's historic, I
Letters
think. yeah.
and people either mentioning it or coming to the meeting,
Okay.
where we've had no negative feedback at all on Borden's Pond.
And we're going it with, there's, the other one down Cape is also connected together with this, so it may be easier to permit because they're already starting with that.
Well, actually, no. We're not connected to them anymore.
Okay.
And it doesn't make it easier that we were.
There is a
But that was a fiasco. Can we put it
Okay.
blindly?
There is a successful one that's moving forward that, hasn't had any negatives associated with the previous effort. And that's
Good.
one that's going on in Chatham. And that one's well represented by Dr. Bob Duncanson. And that's the replacement of a very small culvert with a bridge. And it's a bridge that links Chatham and Harwich. And so it's actually a joint project. So it's a shared watershed as well. So there's several good things that are going on with that. And it has been tied to the estuaries project and CWMP work as well. So good things.
Yeah. We want them to forget the earlier application. Thank you, Nate. And next thing on the agenda is the continued discussion of MEPA response. Nate again.
Again.
And Steve and Ron and
We already passed out.
You already passed out that.
Maybe we could turn the rest of the lights on now.
right.
So
Not
you
quite so
have-
dark in here.
You have a small
This time I'll
presentation,
disconnect.
Okay.
a very short presentation, which is on this handout.
Do I have that electronically in here?
You do, yep. It's only 6 slides, so it's very small. But I thought it would give an opportunity for the viewing public worldwide to be able to see it. And pretty much just brief discussion of the MEPA certificate, the format that we're proposing for addressing the comments, and then possible strategies and next steps as a way to move forward on it. We've received the certificate, and this certificate, which is about 30 pages or so, summarizes the main comments that were received during the MEPA review period. There were 22 comment letters received. There were some supportive comments, some criticisms, and several recommendations.
Nate, just to help you out here, we all have received this a couple of weeks ago. We all have it and have received it some time ago, so I think we're all familiar with
Okay, good.
that part.
This is for the worldwide public.
It-
too.
Has it been posted? Has
It's
just
what's been posted.
all the comments and everything?
Yes, they are all on our,
got one
It's just
more.
a single page. right?
all 22 of
Yeah,
them.
right, we have not more than enough.
We need one more.
We had 21 as of earlier today, and then I realized that GHD supplemental information should be
Alright.
posted as a comment, so all 22 are now up on the website.
What we've done and provided and handed out is a comment response memo format. And the format is drafted. There are a few responses that are inserted in there to the comments, but for the most part, the format is a way of just repeating the comments and leaving spaces on how they need to be addressed. And we need your input. And that's really the reason why we're here, is initiate discussion, discuss and prioritize the comments, identify if additional studies or work is needed, and to move forward on it. And that's all I've got.
All right. So at least 2 members of the committee have undertaken that task.
Oh, okay. Well, I went through it as like, and it kind of elaborate a little bit on the list of the findings I had of what MEPA indicated, or the secretary indicated we need to address in the reports, and that list has been sent. Just by going through it and looking for all the shoulds and all the encourages that, should be in there, should encourage to be in there, and pick them up that way. And there were some things that I didn't really understand. I mean, one of them was, and so I didn't quite know how to write it up. But for example, that the implementation period was too slow, is stated in the document. And then it said that we should include an appropriate planning horizon for the estuaries. Okay, so I wasn't sure exactly what they meant by appropriate planning horizon. And those types of comments, and so I tried to check with Mr. Zavolis on these, and basically called him just on a few points, and then he just started talking and for his viewpoints, and I just held on to the phone while he explained a few things. But he said basically that, and I think that's probably in Nate's memorandum, that there were three major things that he thought that needed to be addressed, and one that I think we've identified all of them. One had to do with the impacts to downstream surface and groundwater issues and that kind of thing, and that's what has been identified by many, many groups. And then again, the speed of meeting the TMDL, is very concerned about that, and thought we should move faster. So I did mention the debt retirement and accruing new debt, and he said, well,
We don't care.
we don't care, basically. It's a nice idea, but, you know.
You have the opinion of one mid-level bureaucrat in one agency on that
Exactly.
subject. The response we got from the secretary did
Yeah.
not suggest that they
Okay.
didn't agree with us. That
No,
it
no, I'm
was a
not saying, I'm
reasonable
just saying,
approach.
yeah, but that was the second thing. And the third was, and I didn't quite know what he meant, was contingencies. And and then he started talking about that, and he said, well, you gotta have contingencies. I thought, okay, we have adaptive management plan.
Yeah, that's
and,
what
you know, this
adaptive
kind of, I didn't quite get it, but then the impression I got, just my impression from his comments, was that he thought we were had a lot of wishful thinking on the alternatives, and we were basically placing all our bets on that. And that was that was his view, but.
Well, clearly, he didn't read it.
No, well, whatever. So I just, I said, well, anyway, I said the contingency basically is the traditional systems. That's their contingency if these other things don't work out and that type of thing. So then he said, then he understood. It was something he kind of, I think he just missed somehow in the report. But that was, he's the one that'll be doing a lot of the reviews on these things. But those are the three major things. And then, I think Nate pulled out a lot of the, obviously I haven't looked at this whole thing, but a whole long list of items in here.
Well, I haven't really responded to them, but I have broken the major comments of the letters just out because that's the way that they want to see them addressed. And typically the way that we'll do it, we'll address the first ones in a lot of detail, and when we see a repeat later on, we'll refer them up to one of the first ones. And quite honestly, the certificate does repeat the pertinent ones from fall.
One concern that I've got is some of these things involve studies, particularly the Crocker Pond and that kind of thing. A lot of it's verbiage. We can always do verbiage, but the studies have to get up and running fast.
Yeah.
And we need a real timetable on the things that Steve promised at the town meeting we were going to do, and the things that the MEPA people say we have to do around those. So the stuff that you have to go out and hire people to get out on the ground and do had better be early.
Yeah, if I can speak on that, we have taken one step as directed by the committee. I believe it was from the committee. Maybe it was from DPW. To go ahead and do the bathymetric survey of Crocker Pond, because that was something that was not included in the model, and we need to include that into the model. So we now have that. We've contracted and have it, and I would expect that you've all seen it, if it's been distributed around.
It's a kettle hole.
Yeah, and
What a
so
surprise.
we
That's a few $1,000 more.
What a surprise.
And so we now know the depth and the shape of it and the bathymetry. And we have also found the existing data that there is on the pond. There was 3 years of monitoring data. And we have a sense of how to proceed with it. And if you'd like, I can put forward some of my ideas of how to proceed with it.
Steve?
This is good. I'm going to backtrack just a little bit because I did a short presentation to the committee along the lines of what Ron said, but I pointed out that, you know, the timetable for response to MEPA is really being driven by us, not by MEPA. And as Virginia clearly articulated, we've got a schedule in place, Nate, about what we want to do and when we go to town meeting and everything. I think what would be very, very helpful to this committee, if we could get it back from you and Jerry, would be something that says, here is a timetable of activities or dates or whatever, of things that we need to do, things that you gentlemen believe that we should be doing or need to do, you know, including, you know, get a draft set of responses out, dates, you know, so we can look at it, you know, I don't know whether it's 10 or 20 activities, Nate, but these sort of things about where you want to talk about, you know, we've been doing bathroom, or just say, you know, do physical surveys, redo the modeling, maybe there's groundwater modules, I don't know. But something that would say, here's a series of steps in a path, I think would be very useful for us to understand what needs to be done. And then we can have a conversation about what is either already contracted or needs to be contracted and what relative costs might be and how do we proceed to do that and what are the likely funding sources. That would be very, very helpful, okay? The other one I mentioned last week, and I hope people picked up on it, when I read through the Secretary's comments, weaving in his review, his impression of how Cape Cod Commissioner, Buzzards Bay Coalition, other people responded, I think we as a committee need to do a much clearer and better job of articulating why we're doing what work and what estuary we're doing it in what order. You know, there's a number of statements that sort of say West Falmouth is the estuary of the highest need and value, and why aren't we doing more there now? And I think we've built reasons why we are doing what we're doing, but it didn't come across, and it impressed upon me that we need to be much clearer about our resources and where we're spending our resources in what order, so people will understand that we're not just throwing money away again. And the last thing I have, and I sort of talked to Eric a little bit on the side about this. I do this as, you know, this is one of the things I've done in my professional career, is seen these come in at, now that I'm sitting on this committee and going to town meeting and everything, it occurs to me that these comments really have come in two batches. There are comments from people who are citizens of this town, who are truly personally involved at a very human level with what's going on here. And then there are people who work for the state and they are addressing the state's needs or whatever. So I would like to suggest, and this is a suggestion for the committee to consider, I would like to think that for those people that are local citizens that took the time and effort to write comments to this report, that this committee basically send them back in essence, almost a personal letter saying, thank you for your letters. Thank you for your comments. This is what we are doing, this is what we know, and we want you to stay involved in what we're doing. And perhaps, I realize you have a form for some of this stuff, Nate, but that we would then use for at least the local people that personal letter almost as our response. Because for somebody who lives adjacent to Crocker Pond to have to write a letter to somebody in Cambridge, to be put into a document, to come back, no offense, through a consultant, for the consultant to put together a very stiff response, to go back to the state and hope that they eventually see it before the next step comes around, doesn't feel inclusive to me. And I think we've got a lot of goodwill we built in this community, as witnessed by what happened at the town meeting recently. All 3 articles were favorably received. We need to build on that. So if that's an acceptable suggestion, Nate, I realize it's a little bit different than how we normally go about doing this, but at the local level, I think it would be a nice touch.
I think it can be easier to cull out or cull in. You know, you have the generic responsive comments, and then you take the ones out that are personalized to the neighbors. And there might be one set for the Crocker Pond group, one set for the eco toilets, or the people that felt they hadn't been heard. I'm trying to think of this grouping of the citizenry.
Right. And we wouldn't necessarily give them different answers than we gave the state, but we would address it directly to them in English.
I would suggest our letter to them can be attached as part of our response.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. The other thing, you have to be careful, and I've noticed it more on this one. The state takes comments that someone gives them, puts them in the report, and the comment may not be accurate. The one that's stuck out to me.
Yeah, we shouldn't pick apart any of the comments.
No, but I mean, you have to be careful.
You have to
because it's
respond.
in there. They might have just reiterated a comment by BBC that BBC believes, like Crocker Pond is in here, what?
Right, but that's our response, comes back to clarify that.
Right, yes, exactly.
But
Well, is that a motion? I think that's,
I don't know, first off, I guess I'm
I
asking.
think it's a great idea. I think we should do it.
I think it's a great idea too.
Yeah.
I've never seen it done. I've never heard it offered up by a committee. I think it's a great idea. And I think that another step could be done because there are some people that are particularly affected and there are some people that feel as though they have sort of similar comments. And it might be good to invite the people that commented about Crocker Pond to a workshop and solicit their input and say, you know, we have chosen this particular spot for certain reasons. We want to make sure you know that. And there are some steps that can be taken to protect your property, your interest, your pond, and start down the process in that way.
Sounds like you've identified another item in the timetable you're going to prepare.
Well, it's it could go that way, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Ron.
I mean, I don't think we should become too Crocker Pond centric, exactly, you know, it was raised, because it wasn't really in any of the other reports, I think it was a missing component, but Wings Pond, there were questions about West Falmouth Harbor even, and
Okay.
even though that line is 30 feet from the site or something, you know, the watershed line, you know, there was no, you know, the mounding effect, could, you know, the groundwater flows we see in your reports, but once you start adding effluent in the hundreds of thousands of gallons a day range, then it could start mounding and moving around a bit. But those kinds of assessments, because they were talking about West Falmouth Harbor and Buzzards Bay Coalition, and as well as Wings Pond and other Rand Canal and a few other things. But
Yeah.
it's basically that you know, the broader view. But Crocker Pond should definitely be one of them.
Right, Steve.
I also think it's a wonderful idea. In fact, if anything, I would go beyond it, but it's a little bit like what Nate suggested. But for instance, with the fertilizer bylaw, you and Sia had excellent results by going and talking to the golf course operators. And this is analogous to that. And in fact, correct me if I'm wrong, I think at one of the town meetings, you had a dialogue with one of the Crocker Pond people. They objected at first, and you explained very articulately that this was already being taken care of, or somebody did.
Yeah, I think Steve.
And then the person said, "Oh, okay," or words to that effect.
Yeah, basically.
So that
Steve
in
did it.
addition to the letter, if appropriate people on this committee, or DPW or whoever, it doesn't have to be the same person for each person involved, actually open a dialogue with them, maybe more informally than a public meeting on TV. It's a personal meeting with them.
The thing we learned in the golf experience is if we go to them,
Yeah.
it
Exactly.
matters. The golf people were dumbfounded that we actually went to the golf course, out to the green that was in question with them and talked about it. And I
Did you
think
use a traditional putter or did you use one of the?
I wouldn't know which end of the club to use, but they appreciated it. And I think you're right. If we're having this conversation, we should go to them.
I think we should.
Before it's finalized, we may
Absolutely.
learn something from them.
There's a good
actually.
meeting place right over there too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Jerry.
One of the things, in addition to the activities, it's almost like, hopefully, Nate just thought about, these additional studies, because we need to identify them real soon. We have to talk with the state to make sure they agree with the scopes of work.
Yep.
Then we have to see what additional funding we may need to, I mean, I don't want to say we're going to do a groundwater model for the West Falmouth Harbor, Crocker Pond, and those things, and then have the state say, well, no, that's not the type of groundwater model we meant. I mean, we have to go forward and make sure everything's in line.
Nate, back to you momentarily. I mean, we meet again in 2 weeks. Is 2 weeks too short a time for you to outline what you think the timetable is and what the tasks to do are?
No, I think that's enough time to provide a framework. The next question, when you see the framework, is, well, gee, how much is it going to cost, and then how much will it take to actually do it? And then those are the natural questions that should evolve as you see a framework and move forward. Yeah.
Well, one concern, I mean, one reason we hired GHD is because it is a large firm with in-house capacity to do a lot of this stuff. Jerry's making it sound like we're going to have to go outside to to get these studies done, and I don't
know where we're gonna go.
I mean, time is of the essence here.
Right. Well,
And presumably you have in-house availability.
Yes, we do. And we also have some specialized services that are provided by Brian Howes, because Brian Howes would be needed for some of the nitrogen evaluations. And I've had discussions from him of you know, the need to go forward. And I wanted to report to you that, yeah, he was very, very favorable and ready to support. I've also had discussions with Dr. Elizabeth Moran, who is our freshwater quality expert, and she was the one that directed the bathymetric survey, and she has taken a look at the data that's available so far. And I've also talked with Jesse Schwalbaum, who is our groundwater modeler, who did the groundwater modeling previously and knows that there needs to be some modifications to incorporate the pond that wasn't in the model. And so I've taken those steps, and I haven't gone much further than that, you know, awaiting and in prep, you know, for this direction that I hear you giving to me now, which is
Well, when we did the GHD contract, we had some additional funding put in for, I think you called them enhancements, but the point is you predicted that there would be some requests from MEPA that couldn't be identified ahead of time, but that's what was likely to happen. And so the existing contract has some funding for that.
Yeah.
So I would think if you develop this scope of work within the next 2 weeks, so that of the things that need to be done, that we could then probably give a green light to that.
okay. Well, that's what.
How about
That's what, you know, when Steve asked if it was too early, I can provide a framework. I may not be able to provide quite a truly detailed scope of work, but
Okay.
can provide a
framework with?
There is a question that I have that has to do with this, and it does get to the plan that you all have developed and are working with, and that is the question that should the evaluation of potential effects for downstream receptors should be based on just the flow coming from the lower Little Pond area, or should it be for a larger area and a larger flow?
I've articulated this a couple of times before, so I'll re-articulate it. I would turn this back on you, Nate, a little bit. As our consultant, I would like you to tell us what we can discharge without causing trouble. Okay, so rather than say we only want to put in from the lower Little Pond, I would prefer that you go do your work and come back and say, you could put this much in at this site without impacting negatively the downstream receiving bodies. If that number's 2,000 or 200,000 or 800,000, would like to know what that number is with some boundary on it. So rather than us saying, we'd like to put 200 in and have you do a lot of work and come back and say, it's fine, but we could have put 300 in. I think it's much better for you to come back. So if that is some guidance that we can all agree on. You know, you did it the first time with the, I forget the number, 1.2 million or whatever. We concluded we could mound it, it would flow, it would not go to West Falmouth or whatever. But we didn't look at these other bodies in between and the impact. So let's approach it slightly different this time, which is
Right. What's the safe
in the
level?
modeling thing, you know, your freshwater person looks and says, this is this is the available nitrogen to put in of the available phosphorus. This is what we think we're going to have from the wastewater effluent. At what point do we cross the boundary?
Yeah, I think that was a flaw in the original presentation, because it included 3.1 million gallons, which was presumably all of Area 1 and Area 2, which is not on the table. And Buzzards Bay Coalition took that number and ran with it. People in West Falmouth looked at that number and said, what the hell are you trying to do to us? I mean, all of this kind of built up over a number that is not a number we're going to be using.
Well, and so that really is the reason why I asked that question, is that we've got a range. We've got the most that we thought, you know, from a practical engineering perspective, that we could fit into those two sites, 7 and 10. So the first question is, should we even be looking at 10?
Well, I think at this point, you should be looking at 7.
Yes.
But we have
Just-
to give the
just-
state something, even if, we don't even own 10 yet. But
Well, that's
7
right.
is the one we're gonna put all our,
Yeah, I would stick with you, Virginia, on that, on stick with 7.
I would
Okay,
stick
so
with
we-
7.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think that, again, when we respond back to the EIR,
Yeah.
one of the things we talked about last week was, again, reactively, we're gonna come back. We're
Yes.
gonna come back more than once to them, saying that something's changed on the project, we know more. So to the extent that we are creating at least a framework for saying a site, how usable is it? How much of our need does this take up? What do we then have to go find for the next site? We had
Right.
a dozen sites, two of
Right,
which are in play.
it's not like it's only 7 and
acquisition.
10, it's also
So-
East Falmouth Country Club, it's also theoretically MMR.
But
I mean, it's,
But I would hope
there's
you-
this
right.
menu.
I would hope the approach here of looking at, secondary or intermediate impact, however we want to define it, bodies of water in between, that becomes a framework for how we will do subsequent
Right.
disposal sites if we need them.
I think we know that site 7, was it hydraulically, could probably take no more than about an MGD. We don't know if it can take that much without, we have to still do the additional studies. But I think that's the order of magnitude, worst case scenario. Then, I'm sure we could have scenario what happens at 2.5, 5, 8.
There may be a difference between hydraulic and environmentally. We
That's
have
right.
we have a hydraulic answer. We're asking now to come back with an environmental answer.
Okay,
Right, right. Ron?
I was just going to say that to pick up on what Steve said, is that, and just what Virginia said, is that if it turns out that Site 7, there's an issue, okay, an environmental issue, not a perk test issue, to really put on the plan, or at least consider alternatives, and that's what Mr. Zavalis had mentioned to me. Just volunteered it. He said, I don't know why you guys are just focusing on these things here, basically. And so it's something that this is basically what his interpretation was from reading it. And then the concern too was, I think, from reading the buzzards, the other reports, this is what's in his mind, is that like the Buzzards Bay Coalition reports that talked about loading limits and the PAL study and the Cape Cod Commission. Well, Cape Cod Commission wasn't as technical, but it still raised it. So he was concerned a little bit. So it's just, as we move ahead, we need to, just as Virginia said,
Stay flexible.
keep the
Stay flexible.
open.
Right.
Yeah.
I think it's fair to say, Site 7, and as Steve said, do whatever studies are required that will give us a number of the maximum that could go to that site without
Environmentally.
Without
environmentally, right.
an environmental
And
problem.
obviously, that's not a year's project, that's like a 2 or 3 month project? Give me a time frame. There.
I don't know.
I said I'd give you a framework, and then the framework would then tease out the next level of questions of how much is it gonna cost, and what would be the time frame of actually doing those studies. I don't have that information.
Okay, we'll have that.
But you have
That's fair.
you have the chair's first thoughts about what the answer should be.
Well, we're meeting in 2 weeks.
I brought up the timeframe, because what do we want before, maybe a month before Springtown meeting? I mean, I don't think we're gonna have a full
Yeah, maybe
final EIR.
Nate, I mean, ultimately, we've got a program that talks about going for SRF funding and 0% financing. I would imagine that we can't have any expectation of success if we don't have the FEIR done,
Correct.
right?
Correct, yeah.
So ultimately, the immediate driver that we have, and we talked about this last week, is really staying on schedule for the other things. And let's put the schedule together, Jerry, and see how that falls out with. We're better off being straightforward with the public and say, we're doing this, it's gonna take this long, whatever it's gonna take.
Right.
Here's where we're gonna be when we go to Springtown meeting. Here's when we'll know it. Maybe we know before, maybe we know
We'll
after.
have some before.
No preconceptions right now. Let's find out what it takes to do it.
Yeah.
Right,
Get it back and have a conversation.
Right.
But ultimately, we have to fit into our schedule, right? And so if that means that you need to consider getting different resources or approaching it differently to stay on that schedule, that will be part of the conversation when you come back, I hope.
Okay.
Right.
One thing I want to ask you all is, what are your expectations for getting a certificate on a final CWMP? And I guess maybe I should go to the schedule and see when the final certificate's
Well,
going to be.
the original expectation was that we would get it by the end of March, where we get the final, in other words, before town meeting. But that was before the comment period, which had been 2 weeks, got 3 weeks, got 4 weeks, and then finally, it was even longer. So I think it's unrealistic to expect that, or at least I certainly no longer expect it.
Won't happen.
But I do think that the dynamics that I hear and the amount of input and the sort of the cooperation that's working on, I do think that this will move through in a fairly reasonable fashion. So that I would expect that we would have it sometime in late spring, I'd say end of May, June. But
Focus on when we're going to submit it.
well, we're, right, and we may not be quite ready to answer that question yet about when we're going to submit it. A lot of that, this sort of, you give us some information that helps us shape things, and then we shape something back.
Steve?
Does the following make sense? That you have an engineering limit, or maybe called hydrological limit, for Site 7 and for Site 10. So the first number you put in is the hydrological limit for Site 7, and you see if that's environmentally acceptable. If it isn't, you crank down until you find where it is.
Right.
If it is, you crank up into Site 10 and see how far you can go until you hit the environmental limit. No?
No, I think Site 7 now should stay on Site 7. It'll get complicated with the work he's got to do.
Okay.
The problem with 10 is we don't own it, we don't have it under agreement, and we have no indication the owner wants to sell it at this point.
But you agree with the first part of this?
First, Site 7 is,
That you
those are not
start with the
problems.
hydrological limit, and if that works, that's all the detail you need.
You're old enough to have done Newton raps and iterations to get to the right answer, right?
Right.
This is what it is.
Okay,
Yeah.
and you understand that?
I don't.
Okay.
What's he talking about?
You start a number
It's a
here, number
secret
here.
code.
You keep seeing how your answer works out, and it gauges how much you go forwards or backwards. So you don't go like 5, 5, 5, 5, 5.
That's a Greek version.
I get it.
The all wrap.
All right.
Okay, good
Okay.
progress. Thank you,
going.
Nate.
Great. This is good. What else here? Reports of members and staff.
If I might, Chair, should we discuss when the next meeting is?
Okay, that's a fair question.
Because if we hold it 2 weeks from now,
Right.
that will be the 27th, I believe.
20th. Yeah, we're not-
Well, either way, it's either, is it the 20th?
It
Yeah.
is the 20th.
20th.
Yeah, I
Oh,
love
then no problem.
Oh, good.
We're good.
Okay. All right. What's the feeling on the 20th? Do we want to take a month off, or do we want to meet once more time and then go back, come back in January after that?
20th.
I cannot attend the 20th. I will be in France.
But someone will.
But I can certainly provide the framework, which
Yeah.
you've requested,
Yeah.
so you'll have that
Yeah.
if you want to meet on the
Right.
20th.
And
Do you trust Jeff to articulate it for you? He's been pretty good.
What's that?
Do you trust Jeff
Jeff?
to articulate? He's been pretty good.
Jeff does a great job. I'm not sure I won't ask him to come to another meeting, but if you ask him nicely, he will. If I ask him, he might grumble.
Don't tell him it's with us. Well, do you have someone in your shop who is the nuts and bolts person on this kind of stuff? I mean, clearly you're not sitting and typing this stuff out yourself. If you have somebody there, could they come?
I'm what I would be is a task manager with this type of thing, and
Okay.
Jeff is he is the project manager, so he is the one that's
Okay.
he is the best.
We need someone here at the 20th.
We'd be, if it's Jeff, that would be great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, as much as I would love to take the month off, I think we need to keep going.
Okay. Well, is there any other views?
I want to keep going.
All right. Well, okay. I know we don't like to take a month off, but we're going to keep going.
Keep going.
All right.
Good.
Other members and staff issues now that we have a meeting date?
I sent something around. Oh, go ahead.
I just want to be sure that Sia has a chance to talk about
Yeah,
the
Sia's got
progress
some
on the
stuff.
eco toilet project and anything else she wants to talk about.
Jump in.
Shall I start?
Sure.
Great. The Eco Toilet Incentive Program has reached cruising altitude. We have I've talked to 140 people.
Wow.
I tallied it up. We've gone to 40 site visits. We probably have 8 to 10 more before we've gotten through the responses that had built up over the year before, as well as the water bill, as the advertising, people learning more about it. The water bill insert got us a number of people, and people tell their friends, so there's a trickle now, but the big wave has been processed. To date, more than 16 people have said yes, they want to move forward, and that's the really exciting news. We've hit a number.
That's great.
And it's very exciting, and you guys are amazing for having started this process and made it happen. I've gotten a number of comments that the town meeting support was significant to people to really tipping people to saying yes.
Good.
About half of the people are going to install composting toilets. About half are going to install urine diverting toilets with paramutations, aquatron things and other novel systems that go with urine diverting toilets. The process at this point is that for the people who have said, and I have a list of 7, 8 people who have said, I haven't gotten a definitive response. So I've got 16 yeses, a number 7 or 8, not definitive anything, so I don't know if they're yeses. And then a number of people who have said, a number being 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, who would like to be revisited in the spring. So there's good support and a lot of interest.
And I have a few more maybe to give you.
Like I said, this is a moving target, but for sure, we've got a good chunk that are gonna go to the next step. And that's what I want to tell you. The next step, for the people who are putting a composting system in that's permitted, the next step is to do a site visit with the Board of Health agent, get his review of the existing condition, just so that he's comfortable with what the existing septic system is, so that if he sees anything that he feels the homeowner ought to know about before they move forward with a modification to their existing system, he's made them aware. And then we submit a Board of Health application, go get a plumber to get a plumbing permit, and go before the Board of Health. And do the installation and fill out the paperwork, and that all cranks very simply because because of the systems that already have a state plumbing acceptance number. There are a number, all the urine diverting toilets, the aquatron, a couple of the other smaller composting systems do not have this product acceptance, and I've been working since the beginning of September, when I understood this to be true, that they needed a product acceptance number, to get the manufacturers to go forward and register their products. And that has not happened, period. They have not done what you would expect sort of a manufacturer that had some information to do. So Plan B has now gotten, I put Plan B into place, and we are applying for a variance. We are going to apply for a variance for test site status for up to 30 or 50 installations, so homes, and we're going to bundle the urine diverting toilets, the aquatron, and then the full circle composter into this variance. One of the questions that came up was, you apply for a variance and you have to have an applicant. And so the question would be, who is going to be this applicant? I thought I'd put my name on the application, but I realized that was not such a good idea. So I asked Eric, and he made the suggestion that George Hoyfelder and the Barnstable County Department of Health and Environment could be a very good fit for overseeing this test site status application, with my support for the individuals who then go under this blanket variance. George was happy to do that.
Oh, good.
He wants
Wonderful.
to, yes, it was wonderful. The one concern he had was that he'd want to have an agreement with the homeowner that he's not taking personal responsibility for the system. Because one of the things that I want to just let everybody know, I've done a fairly extensive literature review of urine diverting toilets, peer-reviewed literature of scientific studies and survey results and a number of other things on doing pilots with urine diverting toilets. And there are a couple of findings that we want to make sure that owners who are installing these are aware of, and how they can be mitigated against. Blockage and odor being the two. There are very simple ways to make sure that doesn't happen, but education of the homeowner is very important. So we want to make sure that that all happens, and George wants to make sure that that when he's agreeing to be the applicant, that homeowners aren't expecting him to take the hit for anything that happens. This is a study. We're doing a research project here. We want to skin our knees. We want to understand what goes on so we can do better for a larger rollout. So that's all going to be documented, and I have written a very clear list of things I must know and sent it to the manufacturers. And they are, they're cooperating. They're going to get me what I need because they understand that we actually, if they don't get me this very simple information, I mean, I've done a lot of the heavy lifting for them, but they do need to give me some things. If they don't, we can't apply for this variance. And the other person I talked to is Russ Robbins, who's the plumbing inspector, who's amazingly supportive and very intelligent and thoughtful about all of this. And he is very happy to support, even come to Boston when we have this hearing and be behind us. But he said there has to be some installation information. We need to have some technical specs. We need to have some schematics that are converted into English units for us. And so there's a certain threshold that the manufacturers and their representatives need to come to get this application in. But it's all ready to go, and I'm hoping it's going to happen next week, before Christmas, absolutely before Christmas. I'm impatient. I want this in. And so that's the status of the program. One last thing. I've identified some needs. We've identified some needs in the program, and I would like to just express, I believe that it's going to be very important soon in the process to have a training session for plumbers and contractors for the composting toilets, but also the urine diverting toilets. Russ strongly suggested we don't advertise a training session that he would be happy to come to and be part of until after we get some feedback on whether we're going to get a variance or not. So he said as soon as we have that, it doesn't have to be the final approval letter, but as soon as we throw it over the transom of the State Plumbing Board and they seem supportive, that would be a good time. But before that happens, it's premature for the plumbers because the plumbers aren't going to really want to come to something where they're not sure it's even approved.
Right.
That was his strong suggestion. So, but I do think it's a need. Hopefully mid-January, end of January, we can start thinking about scheduling that and doing a training session for the plumbers and contractors. We could really use the development of a local skill base for quoting these installations and walking property owners through the process. It is definitely something that is a need, a big rock that is missing in this incentive program, is that local ability to go to a site, to quote somebody, and to be able to walk Joe homeowner or Josephine homeowner through or business owner through the, so you're going to install this, what's really going to happen? So just want to put that out there. And obviously we need our state level permitting, and that's happening, and so that's where we're at.
That's fantastic.
It's great.
It certainly is.
Are you
Terrific.
keeping this in a file? Because eventually we should document it in our files.
5 or 6 files.
Well, no, I mean, it has to be loaded in historically.
I have it, yeah, I keep every email. Every correspondence that I get from every participant is in my participant interaction folder, everything.
I'd just like to ask, how far have you come along with getting your the intern to do the work on quotes? Are we going to get those relatively soon?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, right.
Coloni.
Jonathan was going to do a little primary assessment of like cost per toilet. He hasn't gotten back to me yet.
Okay.
I've been asking. He hasn't finished it yet, but I did get him all the information he needed.
Okay. Yeah.
2 questions, very impressive. First, you mentioned 140 calls, and then you had some little blocks of numbers that I didn't memorize. But when you add them up, they don't come anywhere close to 140.
No, they don't.
So the other ones were still thinking, or no, or what?
Not interested, didn't go to the site, didn't want a site visit.
So essentially no.
Yeah, essentially no.
Okay.
Yeah.
And did you call or ask any of the manufacturers why they weren't willing to do the product acceptance number? I mean, it sounds like they're a bunch of bozos.
They are not.
Or they at least need marketing 101 or something.
This has been well documented actually in Sweden and Switzerland. It is a difficult market. There's not a market pull
And they're making it harder.
And
Right. We know why it's difficult.
But it's apparent that C is persuasive in her explanations to them about how this is not just a dream, it's an actual reality of us doing this project and it's gonna go someplace.
And we're gonna go to Sweden next week.
Oh, I'm not faulting Sia at all.
I want,
mean,
to,
it's just-
I want someone to pay my way to Sweden, as a
Incredulous.
matter of fact.
I
Yeah.
am too. The industry is not at the table here.
Well, it's probably a ma and pa, and it's in New Jersey, and who knows how much. Thank you, Nate.
Thank you, Nate.
the actual issue is that there are
Au revoir.
only 2 manufacturers of urine diverting toilets that we're really familiar with left. There's maybe one in China as well and one in Mexico. But the main manufacturers are in Sweden, and they don't speak English fluently. So the US market, we're creating the first US market of any magnitude for any level.
But you have some U.S. manufacturers and some
No,
U.S.
importers.
Some U.S. reps.
Yes,
There's
that's right.
Yeah.
a US
Distributor.
distributor, basically sent, the shipment comes from, on a boat from Sweden, and he is a US distributor, and he's trying, we have flooded the US market right now with our 6 homes.
Well, it's, I mean, this.
Can't keep up with the
this
demand.
They couldn't keep up with the price quotes.
Well, I'm saying that for other manufacturers in this situation, this is a dream come true.
Right.
I mean, people sweat blood to get this kind of
Well,
exposure.
let me step back a little bit. I noticed a statistic that came from a 2011 or 2012 report, which is put out by GIZ in Germany, which is the central place where they do all this stuff. They said there are approximately 2,700 monitored or known installations where they have test sites that put them in. There are many others that haven't just gone through it, of the urine diverting toilets. In Europe today, there are 1,200 or so in Switzerland. There are 300 and some odd in Sweden. There are 300 and some odd in Germany. There are others in other countries. So there's a small market there. And what I notice in the literature, the literature goes back to the 1990s and comes up to 2011. And what they've been learning in the past, if you read this literature, what they've been learning is how to install these things so they work right in this installation, in that installation, the other installation. They now know how to, 10 years ago they didn't know how to handle all the problems. Now they know how to handle all the problems, or most of the problems anyway. We're finally coming to the point where we have a few they might install here. They don't know about us until just recently. They didn't know we existed. We're not on their list.
They don't read their email.
There's a list
Know
of
us now,
340 different pilot projects in the world, most of them in Africa and China and South America. One in the United States.
Yeah.
And that's in a building in Seattle, or in Washington somewhere.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So that's all.
Okay.
We aren't even on their list. We are now going to be on their list because I'm going to send them information so they'll know. They'll know we're on the list.
But just
and I'm
keep in
I'm
mind,
talking with people. and-
if the salesman doesn't answer your calls, what's the probability that the serviceman will?
We have to have our own
We are the
service.
local
We're going to be the
We are
local.
the serviceman.
We've got to set
Their
it
part.
We're going to make it happen.
All right, thank you for this. Obviously, you've created a national
reports
market
again.
for these people.
Plumbing.
Well, we're gonna get good information for Falmouth. It's
Good.
important for us, so that's why we did it.
Good. Any other report from members? Ron?
I just had a question not on to you, on what you're doing, which is great. We're going to ask the county to give us some kind of a report on again, coming back to the denitrifying systems. I have the 1,500 list here of them. Okay, you can look it up online. But to get some sense from them about what's doing well, is there,
Yes.
have we approached them about that yet?
Yeah.
See, I think C and I in the next couple of weeks will try to come back with
With some
a fleshed out version of how we can proceed with this denitrifying on-site system idea that we've all agreed is a good one and should be pursued.
Okay. The other, in terms of reports, I went to the Conservation Commission meeting last night. That was a joint meeting with the Community Preservation Committee, and they were talking about, this was actually Steve's suggestion, they were talking about the Spring Bars Road conservation component. So they just focused on that. So you didn't see any of the development on the maps, but just the area that they would have there. And they're trying now to look at the whole thing, but I just raised a couple of comments there. One was over the runoff from all the parking lots that they might want, because Horsley Witten is doing the design work, so they know about surface runoff stuff. So
right.
I just said that they should put that on the radar, that they might want to look at that, because there are several parking lots upstream of the site there. And then the second thing was they're going to have a little kayak launching point or something there. So I don't know whether they allow the
shellfish ones?
Not shellfish or stuff. But anyway, I just wanted to make sure that I was curious about how far you had to carry your kayak to that point and that kind of thing. So they're looking at that.
Yeah.
So it's just bringing that into the picture in addition to the, how the whole thing is going to work out. Another thing is, in terms of reports, you all got this, as the Woods Hole Group has provided us with their draft resource analysis. So that's moving along with the shellfish demonstration component.
Should that be discussed? Should that be an agenda item?
I think, yeah.
Just for us to sort of.
I think we got, I'm going through it, and then I can go back to John and go over these things with him, and then come back to the group, or if people have comments, they can send them to me, and then I'll talk to him. One way, either way, if you had a chance to look at it.
Maybe I would suggest,
Yeah.
This is actually a document, if you read it, it's almost so self-explanatory, where he's just telling you how many
It's very specific and technical.
clams might actually be there,
Yeah.
Like 6.
okay? So,
6?
no, he's come up with a couple hundred thousand clams in the body of water,
Yeah.
okay? I would suggest that he needs to go to the next step of what he's doing, to come in and articulate a little more about, this is really existing information. It's almost like somebody coming and telling us that the existing culvert is X feet wide.
Okay.
Thanks.
Well, I'm asking, should this be an agenda item for the 20th?
I don't think so.
Well,
It has it's several steps to go before it gets to
Okay,
policy.
fine. That's,
Yeah,
I
It's
just wanted.
arcane facts
Yeah.
about the clams.
Right.
Okay.
So anyway, I just wanted to say that this is coming along. And we also have a meeting on this, not on the whole thing, a meeting with Conservation Commission next Wednesday,
Yeah.
just to bring up the subject, not to go into any detail or anything. It was sort of like what we did with John Ramsey when he came and talked about, but maybe not to that much detail, maybe less, just as the concept, so they can begin to get that into their minds of what we're thinking about there. And so Steve was going to come, and I'll go, and John will go, and we'll give a little introduction there. So that's just and then in January, the idea is to come back with a plan for them to give us feedback on. And then I think in February, kind of like to nail it down, because if we're going to do something in the spring, it's coming. So, so we're moving systematically at least with conservation. We'll probably have to touch base with, well, obviously with the harbor master, but there's nothing in Little Pond, per se, so it's nothing.
The state regulatory people are my concern.
Yeah.
We're talking about something going in April, and asking them to vet it, be on board with it, and approve it in that time frame is lightning speed for some of these agencies. And I think we'd really be disappointed if it didn't happen in that time frame. So I hope you're keeping them deeply in the loop all the time.
They've been in the loop all.
They're in the loop. Yeah, they're in the loop. It's just at this point, they know what we're thinking about. I don't think the Conservation Commission is quite up to that point yet. So.
Does it make sense, Ron, given what Mr. Brawley's doing, for us to put a placeholder on the our second meeting in January, for him to come in, present what is a plan that he intends to submit, and discuss any limitations or risks on it, so that we can anticipate that in February we actually go by the Board of Selectmen, because I think we're going to need them.
They need to write the letter to the
We have to
state.
make a decision.
Yeah.
The selectmen then have to formally, because of their role, make the submittal, I believe. So I would say second meeting in January, with the hope that in early February, we get the selectmen to sign off.
Yep.
And then we get a plan submitted. Can you convey that to John if he doesn't already have that in front of him?
Yeah, and I think that actually by January, we should also begin to, even though it's ahead of the selectmen, there's nothing wrong with just advising the state. Kind of like
There's all that other stuff. That was
absolutely.
the formal process
Right,
that's right
right,
before
right.
us.
Yep.
We need to have a plan.
Right,
We need the selectmen to accept it, and we need to submit it.
right.
So there's a 2 or 3 week period of doing that.
Okay.
Right.
And let's see, I think that, that's,
Keeping in mind there can be slippage, especially with, the selectmen have a hearing and some shellfishing guys come up and start raising issues that they don't think have been resolved. It could stop dead in the water at that point unless those issues have been dealt with ahead of time.
I would characterize though that we have been keeping anybody that's had an interest in this project fully informed. They got copies of
Okay.
this
Yeah, no, I saw
report,
you sent them out.
and we got, we're getting communication back that, thank you for submitting for
Good.
this, please keep me informed. So again, engaging people.
They want to be reimbursed for the beer, though, that they've...
no, but anyway, the other thing,
I'm over a few beers at this point.
the other thing about Little Pond too is that there's no shellfishing in Little Pond, so it is,
Right.
makes it, but still they're
Less-
thinking of as we move along, so, but that's one aspect that makes it a little bit easier for,
Good.
at least get an idea around it, so.
Good. Okay, great.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other reports?
I have just two things. One is that I want to ask the committee, C and I discussed the other day the possibility that this is a good time to write an article or a letter to the editor, thanking the people who have come forward for the eco-toilet project and explaining to them that's going forward, what is happening and so forth. I would like to know whether the committee would be willing to let me write that letter and say the Water Quality Management Committee wishes to thank these people, and then go on with an explanation of the steps that we're taking.
Any objection to that?
No.
I think maybe we should see it before.
I could bring it back
Well,
in 2
yeah.
weeks if you want. I can send it around to everybody and have them just take a
Sure.
look at it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was intending to write that sometime in the next week, and because, see, what I said, we've reached a level.
Sure. No,
like we
it's
did
a
in
milestone.
September,
It
yeah.
should be celebrated.
And it's a good way to get out the information and have everybody in the town. Tell them it's not too late to apply.
Good idea.
Yeah, okay, so that's number one.
Sure.
Number two, we passed last week a small item that said that we would help Matt Charette
Yes.
on run a workshop. I just wanted to come back to that briefly because Matt asked me and Steve whether we would be willing to talk with the economist in California who is going to be advising them on what kinds, she's been asked to put into the report, what kinds of things could the project do that would connect with what we are doing here in Falmouth and what we're trying to do in Falmouth. I talked with her about that. At 45 minutes I talked with her in California. And I suggested that there were 3 ways in which the project that Matt was doing could eventually be helpful to us in some way. One was anything they can discover about how long it will take for a pond or estuary to recover after nitrogen is reduced. Anything they can discover about that would be very helpful to us. We would like to know more about that. And she knows something about that because she said she knows a lot about the process that has gone on in Chesapeake Bay, and she's also working with the estuary in California that's the most polluted of all the estuaries in this country.
Sacramento.
Anyway, so, what?
Sacramento.
Exactly, yeah. She's working with that. Secondly, let me see if I can get all 3 of them without forgetting one. Secondly, I said that the kind of thing that Matt was considering might very well have synergy with the PRB issue because he's focusing on the nitrogen attenuation and nitrogen at the place where salt water meets fresh water. And I said that might be something there. And I said that the thing they were doing about nitrogen attenuation anywhere in the either at the place where the estuary joins, the salt water joins the fresh water, or anywhere there, would tell us something about where we ought to focus our efforts in trying to get rid of nitrogen, whether it should be as close to the estuary as possible or farther away from the estuary. I can explain that if you want some time, but that's, it's an issue that some people have said we could get a good bang for the buck by putting some 2 or 3 miles away from the estuary over time. Others have said, well, most of the actually there's a lot of attenuation that goes on there. Anything he can tell us about that would help us. So I said those were the 3 issues I could think about. I also told her that, at her request, she said, who should I call or who should I talk about for the CLF? She wants to know what that is all about. I sicked her on you. I don't know whether she's called you yet. I said you would be able to tell her more about that than I could, and you'd be able to tell her who you could go to.
The Conservation Law Foundation lawsuit?
Lawsuit. She wants to know about that.
Sure, I can.
And I told her
I can offer some opinions.
She said she knows you personally, has met you in the past, and so.
Senator Gottlieb.
Andy Gottlieb.
Senator Andy Gottlieb.
I told her also to go to Andy Gottlieb.
That's good.
I told her those 2
Maybe she
people would be
started
the
there.
people.
She can get 2 points if you.
So that's the report there. And I also discovered what the whole project is. Matt Charette is about one of 8 people who's putting together a multidimensional study of estuaries and environmental issues. So the one he's doing is in Walkwhite Bay. The others are elsewhere and other times and so forth.
Okay.
But he has about an eighth of the thing. It's a multi-million-dollar project of which he has about an eighth. And she has no idea whether they're going to get it. There are many people applying for it.
If studies reduce nitrogen, we wouldn't have any.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, are you done, Wayne?
Yes, I am.
I move adjournment.
Oh, wait, we have
We have
a
to vote
couple more
immediately.
things.
Okay, we'll be very quick. Correspondence. Is there any correspondence worth talking about?
We did get an email from Wendy Buesler, sorry, really quick. Wendy
What?
Buesler, OPED,
Okay.
got copies of
This is for something later in the spring, isn't it?
yeah, just that it came in.
Can you circulate around to everybody in the committee?
Send it around. Good.
The
Any other correspondence?
the only thing is this going it together meeting a week from.
On the 12th?
On the 12th,
Yes.
right?
In
there's-
Yarmouth.
That was sent around by me to everybody
Right,
today.
right.
Anybody who wants to sign up, sign up. I think there's a free lunch. You can learn what they think we should do to coordinate with our neighboring towns in pursuing our joint interest in reducing wastewater.
Well, they brought in a facilitator, so I think
Yeah.
they expect some different views expressed.
Well,
It's 12.
okay.
And
Well, any other correspondence? Okay, discussion and voting access to the minutes of the prior meeting. They were all sent around. Everybody saw the minutes.
I sent in, it said I was going to mention that there should be a correction made. You got the corrections? They were just very small corrections. Do you want to go through them? She
Nope.
has them.
Anybody have any problem with his corrections?
Nope.
No?
I think I love your corrections.
Okay, anybody else have any other corrections or additions? If not, a motion to accept the minutes will be in order.
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Steve, the Pillars of Steve's.
Matt, you have a motion.
I move adjournment.
Second.
Moved, seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Good work tonight.
Thank you.